haven't got any foldback.
Skip the GP for common illnesses, says the Prime Minister as he launches a new plan to free up millions of appointments.
A very good morning to you. It is 6 o'clock on Tuesday, the 9th of May. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Very nice to have you on board, leading the news on this Tuesday morning. Rishi Sunak will today announce that 7 million GP appointments a year could be made available under a £645 million plan. The proposals would expand pharmacies, allowing people to receive some prescriptions without a doctor's appointment.
The Metropolitan Police has expressed regret over the arrest of anti-monarchy activists ahead of the coronation. The leader of the protest group Republic was amongst those detained, but investigators said they were unable to prove intent to disrupt.
The King and Queen have paid tribute to the millions of people who celebrated the coronation, saying the nation's support is their greatest gift. It comes as the first official photo of the newly crowned monarch is released.
The Eurovision Song Contest kicks off today in Liverpool. 15 countries are going to compete tonight in the first semi-final, with 10 qualifying for the main event on Saturday.
And now that we've got you, could we remind you that you can vote for GB News and our breakfast show in the Reality TV Awards and the Television Radio Industry Club Awards?
Yes, and you can also vote for Eamonn in the Best News Presenter category of the Trick Awards. He obviously holds the title at the moment, and it would be lovely.
Does that make me reigning champion?
You are reigning champion.
Thanks to you. Thanks to you guys. That's what it's there. It's a people's vote, and this is the People's Channel. So, Trick. And the other one is?
National Reality Television Awards. First time the channel's had any nomination in those awards, so we're thrilled.
So our top story this morning is that the Prime Minister will today launch a new plan to free up 7 million GP appointments a year by allowing you to seek treatment for everyday conditions, and you seek that treatment at a pharmacy.
Well, the measures are said to be worth £645 million and would expand pharmacy services to also allow them to prescribe things like contraceptives and perform blood pressure checks.
I thought they did all that already. My pharmacy does that. When you could get your tyres changed on your car there, they sort of do everything. And I've heard all of this before. It follows the announcement yesterday of an overhaul to GP booking systems that the government says could end the 8 a.m. rush to try and get an appointment.
Well, for more on this, let's speak to former political director to Boris Johnson, Alex Crowley. Good morning to you, Alex. Look, tackling NHS waiting lists is one of Rishi Sunak's 5 pillars. Is this going to help?
Well, let's see, shall we? We've had a lot of talk over the years about pharmacists taking the strain off of GPs. The bottom line is there's still a backlog in GP appointments, and is this actually going to make a difference when people want to make an appointment? Will they be able to see their GP when they need to see them, not 2 weeks later when they're not ill anymore?
Yeah, I mean...
This is this plan's been around for years. 20 years ago I was talking about this. And pharmacies, no one's taken into account. Yesterday on the national news was a report about pharmacies closing under pressure, lack of support, lack of funding.
Yeah, this does feel somewhat like what you tend to get from Number 10 sometimes, which is, we need a story after a bad set of election results. We need to show that we're doing something. And this is the package that they've come up with. Let's see.
Well, you mentioned the local elections, and problems with the NHS was definitely one of those issues that have been blamed for the loss of 1,000 Conservative councillors. The Prime Minister is convinced that this scheme in primary care will free up something, an extraordinary number, 15 million GP spaces in the next 2 years. Would it not be simpler just to increase the number of GPs they train? At the moment, there's a big cap on that, but we know that people are being turned away from trying to apply and get into those positions.
Yes, yes. Interesting idea. Why don't we try that one? Let's see how it works. As ever, it probably comes down to money. Look, Rishi Sunak's strategy is to be the sensible guy fixing real problems, right? That's how he set out his stall. That was, if you like, sort of phase 1 of his premiership. I think what a lot of Conservative MPs are looking at after the local election results is there a phase 2? Is there something that's perhaps a little bit more exciting? Is there something that is going to inspire people a little bit? It's all very well steadying the ship, and that was needed, but where's the ship headed? That's what people want to know.
Yeah. I just don't see. I mean, they say this could be worth 645 million. it's all a bit hypothetical, and I just don't see how quickly this is going to change things and how the pharmaceutical industry is going to welcome it unless they're getting a lot more money to do this sort of thing.
Yes, and what's not clear is what role are pharmacists actually expected to play, what capacity do pharmacists have to do this sort of thing, and are they going to necessarily feel comfortable prescribing things that perhaps they didn't prescribe before? Lots of unanswered questions there, I think.
I think they will feel comfortable, Alex, because, I mean, these are very highly... These people, a lot of them are doctors themselves, and, you know, they're qualified. They know about blood pressure. They know about day-to-day sore throat, sore ears, all that sort of thing. I just don't think that the system is particularly set up with separate consulting rooms, for instance, within the pharmacy. And just the amount of staff. But it's also, it's not so much hiring more doctors, it's keeping doctors. We've trained all these doctors. What are they going to do about keeping them?
Yeah, the brain drain off to Australia.
Well, this is it. And we see the big issue with GPs is GPs retiring. And new GP, not enough new GPs coming into the system. We hear constant stories about people saying they don't want to be GPs anymore because of the strains that they have to deal with and the backlog that they have to deal with. This is a problem for the whole NHS. But I have to say, the pharmacist idea does have potential in the sense that it makes complete sense that if there are things... It's ridiculous that there are so many things you have to go to a GP for.
Yes, go on.
Why can't you go to a pharmacist for a simple little thing to get a simple form filled or to get a simple bit of medication? So that does make sense. And if it can help, then let's do it.
And surely they can do digital appointments with pharmacists.
I'm sure they can. I just, Alex, the thing is, honestly, I've done this story year after year after year, and I'm just thinking, why am I doing it again for? And what has changed? And if this was so good, why hasn't it worked up until now?
Yeah, and I think probably the reason why it keeps coming up and it hasn't quite taken hold yet, I reckon do you think maybe there's a bit of a cultural thing in the sense that, do you think people might be uncomfortable going to a pharmacy and getting things that they used to get from their GP? Do you think most people might think, well, gosh, really, I should probably go for my GP for this? I would probably only trust my GP to prescribe this kind of medication or to give this kind of advice. Of course, it's very different in mainland Europe, where it's much more common to go to your pharmacist for certain things, particularly if you look at countries like France, for example, that people are well used to that. Maybe it's perhaps a slight change of mindset we need.
Alex, let's talk about the coronation at the weekend, and the thing that's causing getting a lot of people hot under the collar, I find hilariously funny, is that these protesters who weren't allowed to protest are protesting that they weren't able to protest in the first place. What do you make about all of this?
I think it's all a bit ridiculous, isn't it? It sort of reminded me of, you know, when a school has an Ofsted inspection coming up, you know, they round up the naughty kids before the inspectors get there. You know, they all sort of send them off on a special trip. And it kind of reminded me of that. It's like, you know, you've got the coronation coming up, let's get all of the anti-monarchists and let's get them out of the way before they can do anything to disrupt.
I mean, you laugh about it, but it's actually quite serious, isn't it? When you look at situations like Russia, and you've got the anti-Putin critics, the Navalny supporters being arrested and put into prison. What's the difference? You know,
well, I'll tell you what the difference is.
Against an unelected
millions and millions and millions of pounds and people...
It's not just about money, it's about freedom. People should be allowed to protest.
Well, OK, let me say, if I was organising the whole event, the whole shenanigans that went on, and you get... you know, 50 Egypts who want to glue themselves to the mall, disturbing the horses, disturbing the whole flow of everything, whatever. I think most people are glad to see them rounded up and pulled away. Go and protest on the Sunday or the Monday or today if they want or whatever. But the security, the safety of people and just the disruption for all involved, I think there's very few people crying except the liberal left and the elite and people like yourself who like to balance stories here for this.
No, but I think a balance is important when it comes to policing,
important.
Isn't it? Well, that's very respected.
They ruin it for the many. They ruin it for the many.
I'm not saying they should be allowed to ruin it, but we should be able to be balanced in our policing. There are questions about whether they got it right.
What you want is consistency. So what you can't have is a situation where they're cracking down on one group of people during the coronation, but the Just Stop Oil lot can just close a road And you see that video yesterday, the Met Police sort of, politely asking them whether they might possibly maybe want to stop doing what they're doing. They're blocking the road. Move them. Let's have some
Wait a minute,
consistency.
I missed this one. Were they out on their manoeuvres yesterday?
Yes, they were doing their little slow walk, what they do,
I thought we brought legislation in to stop the slow walks.
So did I.
Yes.
But apparently, no, the Met Police were quite happy about that. So let's just have some consistency in the policing of political protests. That's what they are, the political protests. So everyone knows what they're dealing with.
No, I think the point is, Isabel, if there is, a national occasion like that, and it can be disrupted to a high degree, I just think, why allow that to happen?
What they've been criticised for wasn't the fact that there was any disruption, the very presence of the leader of this organisation. He was arrested for not having done anything, and there was no evidence that he was going to do anything. And the police have expressed regret overnight and actually personally apologised to him because he wasn't found to have anything.
And I'm sure he was just up to watch the parade. I'm sure that's the only reason he was there for. But catch yourselves on, all of you. It's all real. I don't know. I mean, you can go on this thing. We have a proud tradition of protest in this country.
Well, you miss it when it's gone, Eamonn. Otherwise, we'll be living in Russia or China. But I want to ask you also about this really important story in the front of the Mail about Boris Johnson squaring up to then Prince Charles when he was objecting to his Rwanda plans.
Now, could Charles just turn around and use an expletive, with the second part of which was off Boris? Could he? I mean, I'd love to see. I would love to be in charge and get Boris Johnson squaring up to me. I really would.
I don't think I've ever seen him square up to anybody.
Yes.
So that was quite an interesting one on the front page of the Mail this morning. As ever, you don't quite know. This is a bit of a he said, she said sort of situation.
We know that King Charles has opposed this Rwanda plan and described it privately as appalling.
Yeah.
So it sort of fits the narrative.
Look, what does ring true is that, he came out, he criticised the Rwanda plan at the time, and obviously Boris would have been upset about that, and he probably would have wanted to have, should we say, raised concerns. Whether it got to that level, I don't know. I think this story has come from a new podcast that is wanting to be publicised, which we won't mention, so you can take from that what you will. But look, I've dealt with Boris for many, many years. Sometimes, of course, he over-exaggerates when he reports things to his own advisors.
Oh, really?
Because you've got...
Give us examples when he over-exaggerated to you.
Well, no, if, for example, you had felt that he wasn't going particularly strong enough on something or with someone, he would often sort of have a bit of a joke and he'd say, "Oh, don't worry, I gave them both barrels, don't worry, I stuck it, And it's all part of his personality. Does it mean he actually squared up to someone? I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah. Fair enough.
OK.
Alex Crowley, lovely to talk to you.
Alex, we'll talk to you again later in the show. But for the moment, thank you very much indeed. I think we'll get a lot of reaction to what people are thinking of what you're saying. And if so, you know how to get in touch. Please do that. We'll reflect that and we'll have Alex back after 7 o'clock.
Now, knife crime is a major issue on the streets of the UK and one the government is determined to try and tackle.
But with far too many young people dying due to knife violence, one former gang member in Hastings is now determined to offer life-saving solutions.
Our South East of England reporter, Ray Addison, has more.
On the corner of Battle and Old Church Roads in Hastings, a pair of boxing gloves hang from a tree, a memorial to 16-year-old Connor Ansell, who was fatally stabbed on this spot in 2017. Kyle Miller was Connor's best friend.
We got boxing gloves, a pair of Connor's shoes, and a plaque here with his name on it. So to us, to Connor's friends and family, this is where we come on his anniversary day.
Connor was stabbed in the stomach with a hunting knife with a 25-centimetre blade.
They ran up behind him and he had no idea it was happening. They've ended up coming around this corner here. And it was this bank here, actually, where they fell.
His killer, who was just 17, was sentenced to 9 years for manslaughter.
It's a hard place for me because it's sort of like lets the realisation sink in of what's actually happened. Something I've never wanted to accept or tried to accept. So I tend to not come here.
Although knife crime is actually decreasing across Sussex as a whole, Hastings is bucking that trend with offences going up by 2%. One man trying to prevent more needless deaths is former gang member Carl Scott. A victim of knife crime himself, today Carl is installing an emergency bleed kit in Hastings town centre.
The whole point of this box is it's about prevention, and catastrophic bleeds are what kill you. And if we've got a piece of kit like what I've got here that can help stem a bleed until the ambulance service arrives, then let's put them up all over the place.
The kit contains everything you need to pack and stem a bleed, including a battlefield-strength tourniquet. But Carl admits he's struggled to find locations willing to take them due to the stigma attached.
It's taken me just over 6 months. I've contacted numerous businesses to have this kit up. Nobody wants to admit that we've got a knife crime issue.
However, Carl's initiative does have the support of Sussex Police. Simon Yates is the force's Detective Chief Inspector.
I think it should be seen as a positive thing and not something to raise fear in the community, for sure. They're there to help. If they're not needed, we won't use them. But actually, having it locally could potentially save someone's life. And if it saves one person's life, it's worth having, isn't it? So I'd definitely like to see more.
Although nothing can bring Connor Ansell back to his friends and family, Kyle hopes that one day they can install a bleed kit here at Connor's tree.
It'd be amazing. You know, to have one here especially. I feel like Connor would be proud of that. It'd be good.
Ray Addison, GB News.
16 minutes past 6 o'clock, bringing you up to date with the rest of today's top stories.
The King and Queen have called the nation's support during the coronation celebrations as the greatest possible gift. The message was accompanied by a traditional official portrait marking the crowning of the monarchs.
Around 700,000 households across the country missed rent or mortgage payments last month. Consumer Group Which says around 1 in 20 renters missed a payment.
And Birmingham Airport has been named the worst in the UK for flight delays for the second year in a row. The Civil Aviation Authority says departures from the airport were on average half an hour behind schedule last year. That's more than twice as long as the previous year.
Well, I tell you, if your flight was delayed by half an hour,
You're lucky.
you're lucky, and you'd be very, very happy. I mean, I look at this list, longest waits. It's not a wait. The longest wait is in Birmingham, as you just said, average delay 30 minutes. That's not a wait. That's not a wait at all. I don't take that. Flight being cancelled is a problem. Flights being delayed by half a day or whatever is a problem. But average delays of half an hour, we'll take that.
Yeah, the worst offenders, Birmingham, Manchester, Doncaster, Luton, Gatwick at 27 minutes, Bristol coming in there, Cardiff and Edinburgh. But Heathrow, remarkably, not making the league table of doom. So good news if you're in the southeast.
Well, Gatwick is there.
Gatwick is in there, yeah. It comes in fifth, I think.
Belfast has 2 airports. And Northern Ireland has, 3 airports. Not one of them featured there, which is tremendous. Absolutely good to hear. And your airport stories, let us know. Coming up, we'll tell you everything you need to know about this year's Eurovision Song Contest. Semi-finals start tonight in Liverpool. Next.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's bright and early at 6:20. Still to come on today's programme.
6:21.
You're right. You are right.
It is.
You are. As you were.
Anyway, there's Rishi at the doctor's or at the chemist. We're not sure which. We're going to be talking to. Apparently, we have a minister for primary care. Anyway, we're talking to them about the government's plan to free up 15 million GP appointments. Do you believe it? Do you not? Let us know.
7:20, a new American reality TV show encourages contestants to have sex blindfolded to explore their attraction to each other. We'll ask if we're all a bit too obsessed with sex.
So do you think they know them before they get all touchy-feely? Do they know what they...
I just think it's so base.
So basically, you will have to go on the form that you're feeling as opposed to what you're looking at.
I don't know. I have no idea. I don't really want to think about it.
Gross.
Yeah.
I agree.
Apparently, I think it's all linked to this writers' strike in LA. They've got no actual content. They've got no brains working, so they just decide to get really animal.
They use bums instead of brains. That's what they're after.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Get in touch. Let us know your thoughts this morning.
It is base.
It is base.
It is base. It's just like two old dogs in a sack.
Yeah, exactly. What is there? Anyway, there's channels already for that.
Think of the smell.
No, I'd rather not. Honestly.
There's all sorts of things that you'd have to explore. You'd have to do a lot of sniffing. A lot of.
Let's not think about it too much.
This is what TV has descended into.
Yes. 7:20. Let us know. Do you think that we're all just animals?
Let me just think it through.
We should enjoy that.
So we go in the dark and you get into bed with somebody and you feel around and you kerfuffle around or whatever it is, and then you say, not sure like that, not sure, maybe this one's better.
I think you just get the one and you get to just go. Oh, Eamonn's right, I'm being told by Charlie has followed the rules quite interestingly.
Yeah.
So,
you see, yeah. No, so you would have a choice of options, like a menu there.
I haven't taken as much interest in it as you chaps, but perhaps that's where I'm going wrong.
It's like that programme on Channel 4, that Naked Attraction.
That's what I mean. It's all we do now.
How they get off of that?
Cheap TV.
Yes.
Cheapened society.
Looking at people's genitalia.
Weird.
Oh, let's have a look at Jimmy's willy. Oh, yes, it's a long one, isn't it, Isabel? and as for that stud put through the end of it and dangling there.
All right, okay.
That weight.
Right.
Swing it about for us,
Children
Jimmy.
Are probably having their cereal this morning, so we're just going to move swiftly on. Let us know your thoughts on GB Views at gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us at GB News. It's about to...
Now, the Eurovision Song Contest used to be a massive event.
Terry Wogan, the king.
Yeah. You see, Ireland used to win it every year.
They did.
And therefore,
It was massive.
Yeah, it was massive in Ireland.
But it's in England, it's in Liverpool, which is pretty exciting.
Oh, I know. And,
they used to hate us. Nil point for the UK every time. I know we didn't actually win, and we're doing this in place of Ukraine, but it's
second
a
was a
huge
victory.
honour. Yeah, huge honour.
Yeah,
anyway, it's all getting underway tonight, isn't it?
We're flying the flag for Ukraine because it's been held in Liverpool, as Isabel says, but it is their Eurovision semi-final. First the semi-finals tonight. What happens there?
Well, 15 countries are going to go head-to-head for a place in the main event this Saturday. So if you're feeling a bit depressed, the coronation's over, don't worry, Eurovision's here.
Yes.
Fill your weekend.
Some good quality music there. Yes. So who are the favourites to watch out for? Showbiz reporter Ellie Phillips joins us now from Liverpool.
Hello.
Hello, you're in your hometown, Ellie.
I know, I'm so excited, I'm so happy. I got here a couple of days ago and it's just buzzing. It's amazing to be here. You're so right. It all does officially kick off tonight with the first semi-final. We'll see 15 of the 37 countries go through. Well, 10 of them will go through, 15 compete tonight. And then on Thursday, 16 more compete with 10 going through. That doesn't quite add up to 37, but that's because 6 countries automatically go through to Saturday's grand final. They're the big 5: United Kingdom, France, Germany, Spain, Italy, because they are big financial contributors. And then, of course, Ukraine. So tonight we're going to see 15 of the 37. And actually, tonight's semi-final has some of those who are kind of tip for success. So the ones I'd look out for tonight: Sweden have got Loreen. She's performing a song called Tattoo, and she's previously won the competition. She won in 2012, and so she's tipped to do really well. And then Finland as well, they're performing tonight with Karija, performing a track called Cha Cha Cha. And if anyone hasn't heard the songs, all you need to go and do is go to Spotify, because there's a playlist, and I'm not going to lie, it's actually really, really good. I know some years it's a bit all over the place, a bit random, but this year, I promise you, the 37 songs are a really good listen, and some of them are super catchy.
Oh, I'm really excited. And, of course, it was a bit of an emotional weekend because the tributes started to build, didn't they, to Ukraine. Without getting too much into that, and we talk about it later in the programme, it's a difficult time for them at the moment because there's the big victory parade going on in Russia. So it really is solidarity over the course of the next few days leading up to Saturday.
Absolutely. I was at it was the National Lottery's big welcome party that was held in Liverpool on Sunday night. And it was a huge mix of Liverpool music history and culture, and then Ukrainian. So they had performers from Ukraine. They had the Ukrainian National Ballet perform. Representatives from the country were there, and it was kind of the intertwining of the two. And speaking to the Ukrainians that were there, the performers, and in fact Ukraine's entry for this year, they all said how kind of almost shocked they are with how much Liverpool's gone above and beyond, and the UK in general has gone to such extremes to ensure that it is the Ukraine's Eurovision being held in Liverpool. But I do have to say the opening party was amazing. They had Frankie Goes to Hollywood reunited for the first time in 30 years. We had Ricky Tomlinson read out a poem. We had the Lightning Seeds. So it really was this really beautiful mesh of two cultures coming together to create something really, really beautiful. And when you get to Liverpool itself, whether you're coming by train or plane or car, the minute you get to the city, there are huge signs everywhere in Ukrainian, Ukrainian slogans, the flag. So it definitely feels like it's a takeover of Ukraine in Liverpool, with that musical heritage and culture and the life and soul of the party, with that friendliness that Liverpool offers. So I do think that it is the best city it could happen on. And for anyone who doesn't have a ticket, there is no accommodation left, but surrounding areas have accommodation. There's so much going on in the city. There's the pier head. There's a Euro village every day, huge acts. It's free to go to. You can just turn up. There's a Euro party going on every night, and everywhere in the city there are things happening. So it's not just about the arena. It's so much more than that.
And the Eurovision Song Contest itself is now so much more than just a final, as you were saying. So what you've got 2 semi-finals this week. I don't know what else goes on, but it's a week of events, really.
It really is. And I say the welcome party was on Sunday. I'm not joking. Things kicked off here like a week ago with everyone getting involved and having fun. But there was some drama. You talk about the semi-finals. So yesterday there was actually quite a dramatic U-turn made by the BBC and the Eurovision Broadcasting Union. They wanted to turn the results section of the show into kind of an X Factor style reveal where the acts were on stage and those who didn't get through found out on stage. That was very swiftly 180 on that, and they said no, actually we'll let everyone be in the green room and be with their their countries and be with their kind of teams so that they hear that news, because it's devastating for tonight, for example, the 5 countries that don't get through, to hear that on stage when that's not what they signed up for. So that was very swiftly overturned, saying oh no, we tried it out, it didn't work, we've decided we're going to go back to how it previously was so that they can be with their delegates to hear that news tonight.
For someone like me who kind of likes the Eurovision, I think more when I was growing up under the sort of Terry Wogan era, but have dipped in and out of it over the years, I didn't actually realise there was this week of sort of semi-finals leading up to it.
It's a new thing.
Is there an actual chance, for example, our entry could get knocked out before Saturday?
No, not in the build-up. So, like I said, there's 5 countries that just automatically go through to the final. So when you watch the semi-finals tonight and on Thursday, you won't see the likes of England and the other 5 compete because they automatically go through. They contribute so much financially, and then the previous winner automatically goes through as well. So we will be in the final. I don't know that we're going to do very well. Bookies are saying that we are in about 10th place at the moment. But the thing is, as much as this is the Eurovision Song Contest, it's the Eurovision Performance Contest. I mean, I've seen the stage, I've seen some of the rehearsals. These performances and these stagings and the costumes are so extravagant, so extreme. It's all about how it goes on the night, the vocals, the performance, the energy, how the audience react to it. And this year is the first year when actually, like you said, we didn't really know that there were these semi-finals. Well, usually there's judging for those as well. And actually it's just on public vote this year. So that could change how things go. You know, we'll see how the public reacts to what they see on screen. And there's such a huge variety. There is something for everyone. And I really would encourage people to watch it and just love it. Even if you don't know the acts, you don't know the songs, they are so catchy, they're so fun. And it's always a spectacle. You've got to remember those commentaries. You know, now we had Terry Wogan, we've got Graham Norton. Tonight we'll have Rylan and Scott Mills. They are funny people who are going to add so much to watching this at home.
What do you think of the chances of the UK entry, Ellie?
Yeah, I don't think we're going to win, but I actually think we'll probably do better than 10th place. I think she's so good. Mae Muller is such a performer. The song is super catchy. I think internationally, you've got to remember, this is 180 million people watching this. I think they'll latch onto it really quickly. I wrote a song. It fits really well with the theme. It's sassy. It's edgy. So I think we'll do really, really well. I wouldn't be surprised, though, if Sweden won. It would be the second time Loreen wins. She won once in 2012. I think they are odds on to win, and they'll almost make history. You'll like this one, Eamonn. The history is held by Ireland, an Irish singer called Johnny Logan. He's the only performer ever to have won Eurovision 3 times. So that's not going to be beaten this year. Ireland's still in the lead for that. But I think eyes are on Sweden and Finland, I would say.
Lovely.
I've just got to ask you really quickly, Ellie, because you're a regular face on our programme. People know and love you. They might not realise that your dad's kind of a big deal in Liverpool. He's kind of like the Eamonn Holmes of Liverpool, isn't he? Is he getting is he getting involved in all this Eurovision build-up? Just explain a little bit about your own background.
So my dad was a political broadcast journalist, a presenter on BBC Radio Merseyside for nearly 40 years. He only retired towards the end of when we had the COVID lockdowns. So he's a very well-known face in the city. We go out, you know, to supermarkets, people will be chatting to him, and I'll be like, "Dad, who's that?" He'd be like, "I don't know," but chatting to them like I'm a friend. But he's politics. He's definitely not music.
Okay, he's not
He doesn't know the
showbiz.
difference between like Britney Spears and Madonna. So
Got you.
It's not really his bag.
Got it. Understood. Ellie, enjoy, and thank you for all of that. You've whet our appetite for it.
Thank you.
Exciting,
That's
yeah.
indeed. OK, thank you. You were talking about Ellie's dad being a familiar face. Funniest line I heard from the coronation on Saturday was a commentator saying, and the Abbey's filling up now with some familiar faces there. Lionel Richie being one of them. I don't know which one of Lionel's faces was familiar. He's had
God
quite a
bless
few
him.
in the past few
He does
years.
look good. He's the same age as the King, and it's working for him, I've got to say.
Well,
Looks a lot younger.
I don't know who he looks like, but it's
Maybe
hardly
not
himself.
Lionel.
But the idea
terrible.
that it was a familiar face. Anyway.
Oh, it was great, though. I did enjoy it.
Yeah, that's
Sort of
good.
Coming down on, it's a bit of like the coronation hangover on a Tuesday, isn't it? Sort of just reflecting what's just happened. But wasn't it amazing? Absolutely amazing. Wonderful.
6:33 is the time. Stay with us. The official coronation pictures have been released. They're on the front pages of the
Could have
papers.
straightened up his crown, don't you think? and Camilla's. Am I allowed to say that?
Anyway.
Probably not.
Anyway, Norman Baker and Davinia Taylor with the papers next.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, The People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Just before we go to the front pages, let's give you some reaction. The coronation protesters are getting your blood pressure up. Sandra says, although I agree we have the right to protest, I don't think we have a right to spoil and interrupt a well-organised and supported occasion. Linda says, like many of you, I totally agree with Eamonn. That's all I just need to read.
The many he's quoting is one other that we've been given and printed out.
Terry says, I think the police did the right thing arresting these people. Let us know. None of that reflected on the front pages of the papers today. As we look at that, it is one official picture dominating.
Yes, pretty much all of them taking this picture. The Times saying, thank you, each and every one, as the King pays tribute to the nation and the Commonwealth.
Mail runs with an alleged row that took place between Boris Johnson and the King over the Rwanda deportation plan. Apparently, Boris squared up to the King. King should just belted him with one of his orbs, or what's that called?
A
scepter.
I was going to call it a spectre.
Yeah.
Anyway, The Guardian focusing on the plan to allow pharmacies in England to prescribe drugs to patients in a big tackle.
A big tackle.
Crikey, we need to rewrite that one. Anyway, you get the gist. Pharmacists are going to be given more powers.
You see, and could I just begin with this? And we've got Davinia Taylor and we've got Norman Baker with the papers. If we go to the Guardian, which Isabel was reflecting there, Davinia, and I've heard this before. I've heard it in the 90s, the noughties, right up till now. I thought pharmacies could do all these things anyway, but they themselves are underfunded, and I must say this just looks like kicking the can further down the road. Let's get somebody to do somebody else's job.
Quite possibly. I think we all have to kind of take responsibility about this and get to know what's going on with your body. So, for example, I've just written a new book called Hack Your Hormones with an NHS doctor. So at the end of each chapter, what we've done is we've summarised the key words that you need to mention to your doctor to get the best out of that blooming 5-minute appointment you've got with them. So I think sometimes we have to just make ourselves more responsible. So, for example, if you've got symptoms of like ADHD, brain fog and everything, you might be low on dopamine. And just knowing that, you can sort of like fast-track your way around all sorts of
brain fog, that could be linked to endless things,
all
like
sorts
COVID,
of things.
menopause,
exactly.
pregnancy.
It's understanding what hormones are impacted and, weight gain. You probably are insulin resistant. What can you do? You need to know. You need to have the vocabulary to make the most out of the appointment. I think that's where we're lacking. And there's so much sort of like beige information. Oh, just eat a balanced diet. The one-size-fits-all approach doesn't work. Clearly, look at us. We're in a mental health crisis. We're completely overweight. And we're all absolutely sick and tired of being sick and tired.
And would you be open to talking about intimate things to a chemist?
Absolutely. Just get it over and done with. I'd rather do that than be on hold for half an hour.
OK.
Well, I just think about, going into your pharmacy and you've got everybody sort of hanging around waiting for their meds, and you ask for a private room and then they all think, oh, crikey, what's she got wrong with her? And then you go in. I don't know. There's something a little bit embarrassing about the pharmacists, I think. What do you think?
I think that's true. But also, this is a sign of desperation in a way. I mean, the NHS is not coping, I'm afraid. It's underfunded. You can't get a GP appointment. The thing is in a poor state compared to where it was 10, 15 years ago. And this is a desperate attempt to try and patch something up. And I'm not against pharmacists being involved, but I just think that it doesn't get to the root of the problem, which is underfunding.
And they are underfunded as well, Norman.
They are, yes.
And they're closing down at a higher rate.
Yes, they've closed. I think there's now fewer pharmacies since 2015. There was a blip and it's gone down again now. And of course, that can mean that the nearest pharmacy is some distance from you.
Yeah. The health thing is, I think we need an overhaul of how we look at it. The referral system, for instance, I think is a nonsense, that you have to make an appointment with a GP to then get an appointment with a specialist. I think you should just be able to go straight to the specialist.
Do
they not?
No, and a lot of the discussion around all of this is trying to sort of see what we're doing wrong and what we can learn from other countries. And I think that would definitely... Like you said, people aren't stupid. They've got a sore throat.
You know what?
Perhaps they need to go and see the sore throat expert.
My son dislocated his elbow and we waited 3 months for an MRI scan because we had to go through all sorts of different procedures, by which time they said, oh, there's nothing we could have done anyway because it's reset. Yeah. So you're like, come on, guys, it's only 7. We could have done something about it. We could have had some physio on it, but you just have to go through all this bureaucracy.
I think it's deliberately there to try and make waiting lists look less than they actually are. And Eamonn, your step, just a step before that, you have to make an appointment to get to speak to the doctor. You go in, you have to find somebody at 9:30 in the morning, falling out with everybody else at the same time. You then, if you're lucky, get told that the doctor will call you in 8 days' time, and then you start down this road of getting to see someone. So the whole thing is an extended process.
We'll be speaking to Neil O'Brien. He's the Minister for Primary Care and Public Health in around 5 minutes' time, so we'll talk a little bit more about that. But, Norman, I want to pick your brains on this story in The Times. Police have expressed their regret over coronation arrest. Now, just, put the case, will you? Because there will be people who say, and I completely agree, you should be allowed to have a coronation without disruption, but you should also be able to balance that.
Yes, you should be able to balance it. And look, GBNews, as a channel, has always championed freedom of speech, quite rightly. It's a channel that says that you can say what you want without fear or favour. And the right to say what you think, and the right to peaceful protest, and the right to freedom of association, these are absolutely integral to our way of life, to the British way of life. Now, it may be unwelcome for some people to have demonstrations, but if they are peaceful demonstrations with people holding up placards, then they're entitled to do that. People may wish they weren't there, but they're entitled to be there. And the danger is that if you start saying, well, we don't have it on this occasion, we'll have it somewhere else, then who's deciding that? Who's deciding whether you can protest or not? Is it the police? Is it the government? I don't want to go down that particular road. So this is not about whether, in my view, it's not about whether the monarchy or the coronation should have been involved. It's not about that. It's an absolute issue as to whether you've got the right to peaceful protest in this country or whether you haven't.
Here's my view on this, on the basis that can you actually change anything or not. The monarchy is there and it's there to stay, and nothing any of you lot are going to do with your yellow placards outside is going to change that. It's not going to change.
It doesn't matter, Eamonn. It doesn't matter. I mean, the suffragettes may have taken the view in 1900 that they couldn't change anything about getting votes for women. Didn't stop them protesting. They should be allowed to protest. Even if you protest about something which you're never going to win, you've still got that right to stand up and say, I think it's wrong. And you must have that right in this country to do that.
But they're not reading the room. They're not reading the room. People aren't they're not in the mood for this. There's very little sympathy for, these people being arrested and moved on and whatever.
But you can't arrest people because you don't like them. That's a really bad policy to have in a country. I don't like these people, so we'll arrest them.
I think we tolerate too many people.
You can't tolerate too many. You cannot infringe the right of freedom of speech. You cannot do it. It's an absolute right in this country. And once you start going on that road, suppose you want to protest against sewage being dumped in rivers and someone says, well, you can't do that because the Prime Minister's coming along. You absolutely can't do that. You've got to have the right to protest.
You have to separate it from the issue because otherwise it comes entangled in your own
It's not
views.
about the monarchy.
It's not about the monarchy. It's about the freedom to object to things because when it comes around to something that matters to you, you want to be able to have that
Exactly.
right.
You don't want that.
Doesn't matter to anybody. Who wakes up in the morning, right? You can wake up in the morning and you can worry about sewage and pollution and whatever. I get that. But who wake up in the morning and go, it's 7 o'clock, the alarm clock's gone off. I protest about the monarchy. Why does the monarchy exist? Who actually does that?
I was just talking to Norman earlier and I said, do you know what? Imagine if the Americans had our monarchy. Can you imagine what they would do with it? I mean, well, look what they did with Mickey Mouse. I mean, if they had a 1,000-year history, can you imagine the revenue that those marketing geniuses...
Yeah.
And we're like, I don't want it, I'm like, it's a gift horse, don't look it in the mouth. Just get on with it and let's just it's the only thing we've got. We export everything else, don't we? So let's just keep something.
It is a gift horse. I mean, I don't know why people take it all so seriously. But
It's not about the monarchy. I keep going with this. Yeah. People can stand outside Tesco's and say they shouldn't sell baked beans if they want to do that. They should have the right to stand outside Tesco's and say, don't sell baked beans. It may be completely mad, but they should be allowed to do that.
What do you think? Let us know. 6:45 is the time.
Where should we go next? 2 million households were unable to pay at least one bill, either rent or mortgages, whatever it might be, front of the mirror. And this, I suppose, in stark contrast to the picture, actually, juxtapositioned above it on the mirror, which is the picture of the King in all his finery, which is a wonderful picture, but a reminder this morning that real life is biting.
Real life, there's a picture of opulence with the King, if I may say so, and the story underneath is cost of living crisis, headed Bill's agony. And I thought, well, who's Bill when I saw the headline? But apparently it's about something else. But the figures are stark. I don't know where they've got them from and how reliable they are. They say 7.3% of people who missed payments last month are at the same level as 2022 in terms of missed payments. How do they know 7.3%? That's a very specific figure. What we do know is that food inflation in April was 15.7%, which is a huge increase in people's bills. And the two things which are essential to a standard life are food and energy. And both of those have gone up way above inflation. So some people really are suffering, I'm afraid. And the Mirror talks about possessions being sold, money being borrowed, no doubt at extortionate rates, and essentials being cut back on.
Right, we're going to take a very quick break and we'll have more papers for you just after this. We'll be speaking as well to the Minister for Primary Care, Neil O'Brien. See you in a moment.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, still here going through the papers this morning is the former Lib Dem minister, Norman Baker, and the actress and wellbeing guru, Davinia Taylor. Welcome back to both of you. Norman, can we talk about Boris Johnson and the King? This is an alleged incident that happened, I believe, in Rwanda, according to the Mail.
Well, about Rwanda.
In Rwanda as well, I believe.
Was it really in Rwanda? Anyway, the story is, which is a very good exclusive for the Mail, is that Charles has said privately that he thought the Rwanda policy was, quote, appalling, which is one of his favourite words. And he was then squared up to, as the other phrase used here in the paper, by the Prime Minister at the time, Boris Johnson, to say you shouldn't be interfering in politics. And although it was a private conversation, Boris Johnson says, well, you didn't send out your people to deny the story, therefore it got legs. And there's also another story in the Mail, actually, saying the PM warned the Prince he'd have to sell the duchy if he made a speech on slavery, and Charles then went ahead and made a speech on slavery. Now, the issue here is not whether, it's a bit like the previous discussion about the coronation, is not whether you agree with Charles or not, it's whether or not he's got the right to say these things as a non-political king. And there was actually an opinion poll at the weekend, to my surprise, showing that young people wanted a political king, which is kind of out of order with where we normally are.
In fairness, I mean, the King didn't say this publicly. It's believed he's saying it privately. And he's long been having the King and his mother these private, what are they called, audiences with the Prime Minister, in which they are allowed to discuss and have back and forth. So actually all that's wrong in terms of what's happened here is a breach of protocol, and that the public now understand what happened in a private conversation.
Well, that's largely right, except the fact that he thought it was, quote, appalling was actually given some legs. It wasn't entirely a private conversation because we knew he'd said appalling some time before. So, I actually tend to agree with Charles in a lot of what he says, and I have done over the years. But he shouldn't be saying it.
OK, we're going to see what the Minister for Primary Care and Public Health now has to say. That's Neil O'Brien. As we say, good morning to him. And Neil, the whole thing today is about the government's primary care plan, expanding the role of pharmacies. Tell us what you have in mind.
Yeah, so what we're doing is we're going to free up lots more GP appointments, about 15 million appointments a year, by enabling people to get treatment at their pharmacist that you would have to go to a GP for today. So if you've got a really sore throat or earache or a rash or something like that, you'll be able to go to a pharmacist, get quick treatment, and they'll be able to prescribe antibiotics as well. And so as well as being a really convenient way of getting the healthcare that you need, it'll also free up GP appointments, so it's also easier to see your GP. And so we're going to spend about £645 million on that. Oh, sorry, carry on.
Well, I was just going to say, if people can find their local pharmacy, I mean, the numbers of pharmacies are down to their 2015 levels, and we understand from one of their associations that there is a funding shortfall of £1.1 billion, which isn't even going to be touching the sides with this investment from the government.
So there are more pharmacies than there were when we came to office, and this investment that we're making today of another 645 million is exactly responding to those pressures, and it's responding to something that a lot of pharmacists have said to me, which is that they want to do more. They want to do more proper clinical work and advanced services, and by making this big investment today, we're going to enable just that, and so that will take some of the pressure off pharmacies as well as taking the pressure off GPs. But the other thing that we're doing today is making another big investment, about £240 million in new technology for GPs, because we know it's so frustrating for people and really terrible if you ring your GP and you can't get through. And that's why we're spending the equivalent of about £60,000 per practice on new technology, so that we upgrade their phones and you never get an engaged tone again, and that we also give them really good online access, partly to free up the phones and partly because that's a really convenient way of getting in touch with your GP as well for a lot of people. So as well as the big investment in pharmacy to take the pressure off, we're also investing in technology and also going to carry on growing the number of appointments and growing the workforce as well. In the last budget, we took action to improve GP pensions. That was the number one thing that GPs had been asking me for. That will help to retain more really senior GPs. We're also going to continue to expand the training of GPs as well, because we've taken the number in training every year up from about 2,600 a year to 4,000. But now in our forthcoming workforce plan, we'll be able to go further. And we'll also, as well as more GPs, we're also going to invest a lot in the other workforce in general practice, because it's not GPs on their own, of course. There are the nurses there and all the other clinicians. And we've now got 25,000 more of them than we had even in 2019 before the pandemic. In fact, in total, it's about a quarter more people working in our general practices than there were there. And they're doing about 10% more appointments every month, which is an amazing achievement. I really do pay tribute to our really hardworking GPs for everything they're doing at the moment.
forgive my naivety, why wouldn't we just have 25,000 more doctors, more GPs?
Yeah, well, we do have more GPs. We have nearly 2,000 more GPs than we did in 2019, and we are increasing training numbers and also taking those big measures like the pensions reform to ensure that we retain the really good experienced GPs as well. So we are growing the number of GPs as well as the number of those other clinicians like the physiotherapists and the pharmacists and so on. And we will continue to go further, and that's what we'll be doing in the workforce plan, the first ever NHS workforce plan, coming shortly.
I mean, Mr. O'Brien, you'll forgive our scepticism. I mean, Eamonn and I have both covered similar stories like this almost every year since the time immemorial. Just last summer, your boss, Steve Barclay, said he was going to make these changes. Then his successor, Therese Coffey, under Liz Truss, promised she would overhaul GPs and get rid of the 8 a.m. scramble. And now Steve Barclay's back in post and he's promising it again. This smacks a little bit of after the bank holiday weekend and the terrible local election results, sort of back of the envelope press release.
Well, there's nothing back of the envelope, but this is the first time we've ever enabled these services to be delivered in pharmacy with new money, £645 million of new money to enable a completely new NHS service that no one's had before. So it's a very new thing. The technology investment is new, and that investment in growing the workforce and getting more appointments, that's new too. So all of this is a really substantial plan. It's not the end of the story, of course, and we'll be going further, but it really is a big investment to enable more pharmacy work, more GP work, and that's why a lot of pharmacy groups, and indeed the Royal College of GPs, have welcomed it as a positive step forward.
And Minister, when as a patient would we be seeing a difference? How soon would we notice that our calls are being answered quicker, that there are more appointments available?
So in terms of being able to go to your pharmacy and getting these new services, that will be coming later this year. In terms of the new technology that we're going to be giving to GPs, that's going to be rolling out during the course of this year and into next. And in terms of the extra staff, well, some of them are already there. There's already about a quarter more people working in GPs than in 2019. But that will be steadily growing over the coming months and years. So it comes in a kind of phased way, and we will of course be doing a big communications campaign so that people will know when these services are becoming available in their area.
Just lastly, I want to ask you about the backlash about some of the policing over the coronation weekend. The Prime Minister has said he's grateful for the efforts of the Metropolitan Police, and yet the police themselves have overnight expressed regret for what's been described as heavy-handedness. Which way is it? How do you view their policing?
Well, I think the police did a really excellent job over the coronation, enabling a fantastic, joyous national event to take place without incident. Stopping people who wanted to do silly and irresponsible things like setting off rape alarms from disrupting events. So I think that they did a good job over the weekend. Obviously, it's obviously regrettable if anybody gets themselves arrested on what should be a really good occasion for the nation. But I think the police did a good job overall and overall enabled a really great and impressive event that the entire nation enjoyed. So I think they did a good job.
I mean, sorry, just to pick up on the point about rape alarms. I mean, that was a Home Office approved charity that was handing out those rape alarms. There were a huge number of women travelling in the cover of darkness to get to the coronation. I think of my own mother-in-law, nearly 60 years old, on a night bus going up to the Mall. People were trying to look out for women and protection, and people were arrested for trying to help in that scenario. Do we really want to live in a country where somebody who's anti-monarchy, we may disagree with their views, but are arrested just because of the title of their job?
It wasn't about that. The threat was that people were going to deliberately let off rape alarms in order to scare horses and disrupt that procession. And that could have been a tremendously dangerous thing to do. If you startle a load of horses, people could have been trampled, and as well as being disruptive, it could have been a really dangerous, stupid thing to do. So I think that the police did the right thing in keeping order and enforcing generally decent behaviour. So I think that they've done the right thing, and that in a difficult scenario, they always have to take tough decisions. It's not for me to second guess every single decision they make, but overall I think they did a good job.
Minister, got to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. That's Neil O'Brien on the government's primary care recovery plan. Let us know what you think. Minister, thank you very much indeed. We'll be back after the weather.
Hello there, welcome to your GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. I'm Craig Snell. Having a look at today, really it's a mixture of sunshine and scattered showers, and some of these showers will be quite heavy and thundery. It's all down to this area low pressure, which is actually not going to go very far over the next few days, giving a rather changeable week across many parts of the UK. But in any sunshine, it should feel fairly warm if you are out and about. So if we start Tuesday, a quite grey start actually for a lot of the UK. Still some overnight rain to contend with initially, but some sunshine will develop as the morning goes on, but this will allow some showers to readily form, and especially as we go into the afternoon, these showers will turn quite heavy and thundery, and also quite slow moving in places, especially across parts of England and Wales. So could produce quite a lot of surface spray on the road, so do take some extra time for your journeys, especially as we approach the evening rush hour. But in the sunshine, feeling fairly warm, could see highs reaching 20 or 21 degrees down towards the southeast corner. The showers will rumble on as we go into the evening, but for most it should turn drier and clearer for a time as we approach midnight. But then later on, this next band of rain and showers will spread into many western parts. So for many eastern areas, actually a cooler night than the night just gone, but out towards the west with this, thanks to this next area of cloud, another mild one to come with lows not falling much lower than around 10 to 11 degrees. So after some sunshine in the east at first on Wednesday, really it goes downhill once again from the west as this next spell of rain and showers spreads its way eastwards across the country. Again, we could see some heavy and torrential downpours in places and the risk of thunder at times. Perhaps maybe some longer spells of rain too across Scotland and Northern Ireland. Temperatures a little bit down on today, but still around average for the time of year. And very little changes actually on Thursday, another day of sunshine and scattered showers. But hopefully, as we approach the weekend, something a little bit drier coming through with temperatures maybe also climbing just that little bit.
Skip the GP for common illnesses, says the Prime Minister, as he launches a new plan to free up millions of appointments.
Hello there, very nice to see you and have you on board. The time, 7:01, Tuesday the 9th of May. Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel. You're very welcome.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. Rishi Sunak will today announce that 7 million GP appointments a year could be made available under a £645 million plan. The proposals would expand pharmacies, allowing people to receive some prescriptions without a doctor's appointment.
The Metropolitan Police has expressed regret over the arrest of anti-monarchy activists ahead of the coronation. The leader of the protest group, Republic, was amongst those detained, but police said they were unable to prove intent to disrupt.
The King and the Queen have paid tribute to the millions of people who celebrated the coronation this weekend, saying the nation's support is the greatest gift. It comes as this first official photo of the newly crowned monarch has been released.
Eurovision Song Contest starts today in Liverpool. 15 countries will compete tonight. It's the first semi-final. 10 qualify for the main event on Saturday evening.
And this morning, we were wondering if you could find the time to vote, please, for GB News. Would you mind? We've been nominated for the first time ever in the Reality TV Awards. We're really excited about that. And for the second year in a row, we've been nominated in the Trick Awards. Eamonn, his reigning champion for Best Presenter of the Year, News Presenter. We're hoping that he will retain the title. And you just have to go onto the websites of both of those awards and put in your votes early and often, if you don't mind.
It's a nice day out, isn't it?
Oh, it's a very fun day out.
Yeah.
There's a couple of days out. Well, one's a day, and then the NRTAs are in the evening.
In the evening, OK. Well, you know what to do. We'd be very appreciative if you did do it. Thank you very much. OK, so what's going on with chemists? What we need is somebody from the pharmacy industry to talk about all of this, because they're expected to deal with the Prime Minister's plan to free up what he says is 7 million doctor's appointments, GP appointments a year, by allowing you to go along to your chemist instead. So things like sore throat, sore ear, you know, that sort of thing that you feel that you could talk to your chemist about and get a prescription from them.
The measures are worth £645 million, and they'll expand pharmacy services to also allow them to prescribe things like contraceptives and perform blood pressure checks.
But I thought they did all this anyway.
Not contraceptives, that's for sure. You still have to go in and say yes, doctor, no, doctor, and have embarrassing questions if you just want to have your pill renewed.
Well, I know they do blood pressure and they do shingles and they do, what else? There's lots of older vaccinations for abroad, don't they? They do all those sort of things as well. But what do you, the chemists, say about all this? Community pharmacies, can you cope with all of this? So this was following an announcement yesterday of an overhaul of the booking system. So come 8 o'clock this morning, you know the situation. Everybody's on the phone, phoning their GP, and what can you do? What can you do about it? Now, we've had our say. NHS GP, Dr. Anita Raja, joins us now. Dr. Anita, what do you think about what you're hearing? Isabel and I were saying throughout the programme this morning, we've heard all this before.
Certainly, we've heard all of this before. 7 million appointments essentially does not even make up 5 to 6 days worth of GP work in a year. So a GP see more than 1 million people in one day. So you're telling us that this is going to free up like 7 million appointments a year. That's really not much. Secondly, you're imposing 240 million worth of budget in a time when money is so scarce, doctors are striking. You're telling us you can't pay the nurses because you can't afford it. You're telling us you can't pay the doctors because you can't afford it. But you can afford spending 240 million pounds on an IT system, which is already present in general practice. Most GP surgeries have had this IT system for the past 7 years, and most of our reception team are already care navigators. So what's new about this? It's simply a restructuring, revamping. It's something that the government has been doing again and again, rename, revamp things, same protocols, same procedures that have been happening for years, and invest money in it. If they would have just sat down on a table with the GPs, they would have understood what the ground realities are. RCGP has welcomed this. Of course they have. Any amount of money is good for primary care, but let primary care decide where they want to spend it. Don't impose it on an IT system.
So where would you like to spend it then? Because clearly you're critical of the government, and I know that you've been striking as well and an outspoken critic of them. But, you know, at least this is, as you say, at least this is something. You know, there is clearly a problem with people being able to see their GPs.
Yeah, so the system is obsolete, as I've said. The system is already present. The system basically, essentially, doesn't give you an engaged ringtone. You'll still be in a queue. What the government is now saying is that there's a supermarket, there are 50 loaves of bread, the 50 loaves of bread stay as they are. The 100 people queued outside for these 50 loaves of bread stay as they are. But yes, we're opening 5 more doors, entrances to the supermarket. How is that going to change the capacity, the amount of bread that we're producing? Why are we not doing anything about that?
So what do you want to see? More GPs?
That we're 2,000 GPs short. We are 2,000 fully qualified GPs short, and we're not at the moment, because I was listening to the MP's interview and he was saying that we've got 2,000 extra GPs. That's not right. I mean, if they're going to count in GP trainees, ANPs, pharmacists, and everybody else who's working in a GP surgery, that does not equate to a fully qualified GP.
Well, Doctor, you are a fully qualified GP and you've got to deal with the situation on a day-to-day basis. And it's obvious how passionate you feel about this. And you're passionate because you feel that they still haven't got it right and they're not going to get it right with all of this. But it's this idea that they can make this announcement and we're all supposed to think, oh, well, that's that problem gone away. That's that totally solved. You would disagree.
I would disagree. I am worried that they are increasing, the expectations of the public by telling them that they've come up with this magic wand, which is going to solve the core issues within general practice. The GP contract, why are they not giving more money towards the GP contract? Why are they not speaking to the GP partners? Why are they imposing and spending this money on an IT system which is not needed? It's just a simple question.
And also we know that pharmacists are saying they're already under a huge amount of pressure and this will just add to that. Can I just ask you from a medical point of view, do you have any concerns about pharmacists prescribing antibiotics, given that we know that there are concerns about it being overused?
I mean, I would say that there are very, very helpful and supportive colleagues. General practice or any other healthcare system would be in complete shambles without their support. And pharmacists are now prescribing the mini pill, the progesterone-only pill, which doesn't have an estrogen in it. It's fairly, safe to be prescribed. They're prescribing vaginal HRT as well. They're trying to help as much as they can. But and I know that at the moment there are so many, hundreds of pharmacies have already closed down. I mean, by the time this is going to be implemented, we may not have a pharmacy near us. So everybody's under a lot of pressure. So we need to really, really, really work towards capacity, retrain, recruit, and value your healthcare staff.
Retrain, recruit, value the healthcare staff. Dr. Raja, thank you very much indeed for outlining all of that. We now take the discussion to Alex Crowley. Alex is a former political director to Boris Johnson. So the Prime Minister is making his case on all of this. There's one doctor, for instance, who's not buying it.
Yes, and it's understandable because we're talking about a shortened political timescale here. The reforms that the previous speaker was talking about are absolutely right. But can they be brought in before the next election in terms of training a whole load of new GPs, putting all of the money in? It simply takes too long.
Yeah.
So from a political perspective, Rishi Sunak has to demonstrate some kind of action now on GPs.
Which would be what?
So this is what he's talking about today. The simplest thing to do is the sort of tweaks to the system that we're seeing here today, which is... And of course, it's ridiculous. There are some things that you shouldn't have to go to a GP for. Why shouldn't you go to your pharmacist to get a simple prescription for the contraceptive pill, for example? Why should you have to do the 8 a.m. queue just to get your prescription renewed? There are very sensible changes that you can make, and that's what they're trying to bring in today.
I want to ask you about the backlash to these arrests that we've been discussing this morning. I don't know if you saw the interview with the Minister there. He had absolutely no problem with any of the action taken, even though the police themselves have expressed regret about their own actions. The government got the tone wrong on this.
Well, I think it's a tricky situation because it's a big national event and it's a big public order event, and the first job of the police is to make sure that event goes smoothly. It was very...
Safely.
And safely as well. It was very clear that there was going to be people looking to disrupt the coronation. They didn't make any secret of it. They were all there. They knew who they were. And yes, it probably was the case that they were perhaps slightly preemptive in trying to make sure it went okay.
But if they hadn't been preemptive and something went on, the police would have been to blame again for not taking action.
Yes, exactly. And, I mean, it seems like the Met can't really do anything right, and there are some good reasons for that. What I would say is that we do need to see a little bit of consistency. On the one hand, they're cracking down on people who want to express opposition to the monarchy. On the other hand, the Just Stop Oil lot are able to close any road they like, and the police... seemingly would like to sort of gently ask them whether they might possibly maybe want to stop doing it. We need to have consistency.
Yeah, it's bewildering. Can I ask you about the story in the front of the Daily Mail? Boris and Charles in a bus stop, and actually the phrase that the paper quotes is that Boris Johnson squared up to His Majesty in opposition to the Rwanda scheme.
Well, I would have loved to have been in the room if that happened. I've never seen Boris square up to anyone, and it seems a slightly fanciful story. Not sure exactly where it's come from. I think it's probably very fair to say that Boris will have wanted to express
it's a conversation
concerns
between one of Boris's closest mates and advisors, Guido Hari, isn't it?
Yes.
That's what Boris has told him.
Well, so he has claimed that Boris told him that he had. I think the phrase used was that he had sort of went in hard. I think was the Boris phrase, of course. Fine, that's what he said. Boris's other people have come out today saying, no, that didn't happen. It's very hard to know who to believe. What I would just say is that I've frequently seen Boris in the past where, say you wanted him to be slightly harsher on someone or some issue, he perhaps might have, kidded you along. He might have said, "Oh, look, don't worry. I went in hard. I went into bat." How seriously to take it? Who knows?
Who knows? Alex Crowley, thank you. Very interesting listening to you. Alex is a former political director to Boris Johnson when he was Mayor of London and former advisor at number 10 Downing Street. Thank you very much, Alex.
Right, with the time at 13 minutes past 7, let's bring you up to date with the rest of today's top stories.
The Metropolitan Police says it regrets arresting 6 anti-monarchy protesters ahead of the coronation. The leader of the protest group, Republic, was amongst those detained, but investigators said they were unable to prove intent to disrupt.
Around 700,000 households across the UK missed rent or mortgage payments last month. The consumer group Which says around 1 in 20 renters missed a payment. 6 in 10 people reported making lifestyle changes to cover essential spending, including dipping into savings, selling possessions or borrowing.
Birmingham Airport has been named the worst in Britain for flight delays for the 2nd year in a row. The Civil Aviation Authority says departures from the airport were on average half an hour behind schedule last year. That's more than twice as long as the previous year. I'd settle for that.
Now, today, Russia will celebrate Victory Day after Russian forces launched a series of kamikaze drone attacks on Ukraine.
What's a kamikaze drone attack? Well, all drone attacks are going to be kamikaze, aren't they?
Yes, yeah.
And they crash, is not what they do. No, they don't. Robert Fox is with us now. So they can release their bomb and fly away again. Is that...
Good, sophisticated drones, which you know all about, Eamonn, can be recalled and can be used all over again.
Gotcha.
These are the cheap and not very cheerful. They're largely the Iranians, and you have to write them off. They are a flying bomb.
OK, got you.
V1, V2.
Yeah.
So listen, here we are a year on from the last victory parade, and there were, everyone was on edge this time last year, wondering what exactly was going to happen. And the same again, we're all wondering what on earth is Putin going to do today to celebrate Victory Day?
I think the fascinating thing will be what Putin says or doesn't say, because it's all been pretty cautious up to now. We'd had a deadline, remember, that they had to take the whole of Donbass, that is Donetsk and Luhansk, and secure it by May the 9th. It was deadline set by Putin. Well, they've sort of done it, but they've trashed the place to pieces. And they've got another major crisis over the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant as we speak this morning, evacuating 16 villages around. Google Earth pictures of Bakhmut as well as Zaporizhzhia and around Melitopol and Mariupol, and it is a desert of rubble. Now, is that the liberated Ukraine you want, Mr. Putin? I think that it's going to be a day of really big questions today.
And probably won't be answered.
When we talk about Zaporizhzhia, we always talk about the nuclear plant there, and you're talking about the way the whole city looks. So what about the chances of a nuclear meltdown?
It is the nuclear option. It is the great nuclear threat hidden in plain sight. And it's really quite surprising that more hasn't been made of it. We know all about Chernobyl, 1986, and the Russians allowed their troops to camp there in still polluted areas where a lot of damage is still apparent and it's not completely clean. That is small, or on a smaller scale, according to the IAEA, the International Authority, compared to Zaporizhzhia, which is one of the very biggest plants in the whole of Europe, let alone Ukraine. And the fact is that they're keeping it going with diesel generators at the moment. There has been a terrible warning. I know that they issue them on a fairly regular basis from the IEA again. This is really very worrying. And what is so worrying is that the Russian authorities, military and civil, don't seem to take it that seriously.
Well, the United Nations have warned of a severe threat of a deadly accident. So they're obviously taking it incredibly seriously.
Which would affect Eastern Europe. Eastern Europe and probably come as far as here.
Terrifying. Where are we a year on, though, from the last victory parade in terms of a resolution to all of this? I mean, as you say, the headlines have kind of moved on, haven't they? We barely talk about the seriousness of what's going on. Does that mean things are getting better, or have we just become fatigued?
No, it is absolutely fatigued. There's no doubt about it, because they're quite open about it. The Ukrainian population, as well as the forces, are pretty exhausted, but they're hanging on in there. What is so extraordinary, even if you discount so much to propaganda and so on, is just the sheer level of destruction of Russian manpower. Sorry, I'm not being sexist, because it is largely manpower. Very few women that we've seen in the front line, which is not part of a Russian doctrine. Now, can you really say that at a minimum you have lost between 20,000 dead and up to between 60 and 80,000 seriously wounded, taken out of the battle in 5 months alone, which is higher than the death and injury toll of the ill-fated operation of 10 years of Russia in Afghanistan between 1979 and 1989. Now, took a bit of a delay. That had a real effect, which is still remembered among veterans. We're looking for a tipping point as to where this really goes through to the public consciousness of the Russian people, and it will happen when more are called to arms and by hook or by crook are sent to fight in Ukraine. Next 2 or 3 months, absolutely crucial. I can't look into a crystal ball. There's been far too much of that. The Ukrainians intelligently have been doing expectation management. Yes, there'll be a big offensive. Now Reznikov, the defense minister, is saying, no, don't oversell yourself. They are not resource rich, but they're hanging on in there, and there are various things that they want from the West now, and particularly recognition.
Thank you very much, Robert. Appreciate it. Thank you. The time is coming up to 7:20. Please do stay with us. A new reality TV show we're going to be talking about encourages those taking part to have sex in the dark. We'll ask if we've become too obsessed with physical attraction next.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories. Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Good morning to you. If you're back to work this morning, back to school after the bank holiday, you're very welcome to the programme. It is 7:23. Still to come.
A deposit-free mortgage has been launched by Skipton Building Society, aimed at people who are currently renting. OK, how good an idea is this? 8:10. We'll be talking about that.
And after yesterday's coronation big help out, we'll ask the head of the Royal Voluntary Service about the success of the event and what it was like chopping vegetables alongside the Prime Minister and his wife.
I think volunteering is an amazing thing. I'm slightly split on. I think everybody should have a duty to volunteer. I think it should be in you. You'll feel really good about it, and I so commend people who do it. Part of me, though, when I see people picking up litter and whatever, which I think is a great idea, it's not the people who have caused the litter or dropped the litter, yet they're clearing up someone else's mess. Some white van man is just throwing his stuff out the window on a slip road or whatever. So
good people volunteer, and the bad people should be chain gang to pick it all up. That's my views. Let us know yours.
Well,
GBnews at gbnews.uk. No, I agree. Or you can tweet us at GBnews.
So there are far too many TV stations out there, and they all need to be noticed now. The NBC version that streams in the UK is called Peacock, which is very appropriate when we tell you what the next show is all about. A bit of
peacocking going on. Plans for a new show set to rival Channel 4's Naked Attraction, and this will have contestants having sex in the dark.
Fornicating.
Well, that's just an old-fashioned term, isn't it? Sex before marriage.
Fornication goes on, and it's called sex in the dark. Right, so you switch the lights off, and then they get at it, right? Fornication. That's what it is. It's just weird.
It's just so weird. Is there nothing better that we can put on our television?
Temptation of the flesh.
Has society become too obsessed with sex? Let's speak to dating and relationships expert Kate Mansfield. What's your view about all of this?
Well, I think this is actually an all-time low in terms of where we're going in the media, with the desensitisation of sex and the way it's portrayed. I mean, for me, this is basically a family sitting round together watching porn. I mean, how is it any different? There's people in the dark having sex with each other, trying to figure out if they're a match. I mean, it's just actually unbelievable to me.
And where are we in society if the only way you can decide if someone's a match for you is what they're like in the sack? Like, that's what percentage of a relationship...
It's a pretty good starting point.
No, of course it is. But if anyone thinks that's the only basis of a relationship, then that's where we're all going wrong.
Absolutely. And actually, I don't agree that it's a good starting point. I think that's the whole problem with most relationships. I think that a starting point should be emotional connection, trust, building friendship, getting to know somebody.
It's a pretty good secondary point then.
It is important. I'm not saying it's not. But I think the whole problem with relationships, and my clients come to me so confused. I think we are in a huge crisis in the whole world of dating and relationships because of this issue. And I think that the media is largely responsible because of these kind of shows.
There's a theory that there's this writers' strike going on in LA at the moment, and essentially this is the most brainless television that they can put out there because none of the people with brains are working at the moment. So they're like, I know what, let's just strip people naked and get them to behave like animals. I mean, it's that base as far as I can tell.
Yeah, I think so. It's a cheap shot. They're scrabbling around for content, but I think that there's still no excuse. I'm sure they could have found something better than this that actually is positive and teaching people how to have, you know, healthy relationships. I mean, what are we teaching our young people? I think ultimately, you know, we're going towards a place where using sex and love almost like a drug is becoming the norm when we look at social media and young people as well. And I think we need to really start taking this seriously because I think we're headed for a huge crisis, actually. In
Kate, doesn't it stigmatise the contestants, the people who take part in this, that they're judged on the basis that they haven't seen each other, they have touched each other and felt each other, and then they can have intercourse with each other, and then we will know who those contestants are?
Yeah, I mean, I feel sorry for them. You know, a lot of people go on TV wanting a moment of fame, and I think a lot of these people on this show are actually going to live to regret it, taking part in this. I mean, I think you're kind of putting yourself up for a lot of abuse and a lot of judgment and stigma. Yeah, I just think I think it's a terrible idea, the whole thing.
Would you do it, Isabel?
I don't think I even want to dignify that question
I mean,
with an answer. What
I mean,
do you think?
Well, if they had a celebrity version...
I'm married, and even if I wasn't, not a chance in hell, full stop.
Well, if they paid me enough, like, I mean, but, you know, I mean, there could be worse things to do. I do get...
Are you serious? I mean, let's just break that down for a minute. If they paid you enough, you would take your clobber off and have sex in the dark and have someone assess you and decide whether or not...
It would give too many people too many
a lot of
cheap
pressure.
thrills. No pressure. But no, looking at it, and it's just like, as Isabel was saying earlier, it's like watching two dogs in a sack or something, or cats in a bag or something. It is as low as it goes, really.
I think so. I think absolutely. And I think we need to be really thinking more carefully about what we're portraying in the media in terms of what a relationship should look like, what's involved in making those decisions.
Playing devil's advocate, what about those people who would say, you know, it's liberating, that actually sexual compatibility is a really interesting side to our humanity, that we need to try and, you know, experiment and understand our sexuality more?
I think that those things might be true, but I think if we're looking at actually how to build a functioning society with families and people who are in deeply connected emotional relationships that are going to sustain over time, I think this is something very different. I'm sorry, I just don't think that this is relevant to that. And
I wonder how they get through Ofcom, to be honest. I presume it's after the watershed and all the rest of it.
No, Ofcom are more interested if I say
something about Meghan Markle.
Something about Meghan Markle, or you use a term. I'd love to say the swear. I mean, I like swear words. I think swear words are quite good. But, you know, the idea that in this day and age, there's certain things you can't say, you know, this would have got you detention at school, and that, you know, people will be shocked by you saying certain words, like, you know, the sort of words you use all day.
Well, in private.
In private. But, but, I mean, that's the hypocrisy of all of this.
But, Kate, I
nonsense.
think you made the point, you know, it's like watching porn with your family. If you want to watch porn, just go and watch porn. We don't have to be putting it on normal family access televisions where children can stumble upon it.
Absolutely. I mean, I think we're just giving children and young people the message that sex is all that matters. And, you know, we are facing a crisis in dating and relationships. I'm seeing it on the ground level with people who come to me who've had their lives actually devastated because of these kind of things, where they're just absolutely unable to connect emotionally. They don't understand what a relationship involves. They don't understand how to communicate. And I think we're just putting out a message that sex is all that matters, and it's just not true.
It's this really idea that you've got nothing to contribute to a relationship apart from your body.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just so backward.
Absolutely. And I think what we're missing is teaching people how to connect, you know, over time, how to build trust. And actually, even the show Love is Blind, you could argue, they're creating an emotional connection first. I don't think that's true either, because they don't actually know each other. So it's a very strange concept to think that you're getting to know the real person. You can't get to know the real person behind a wall or just in the dark through, you know, having sex.
Yeah, but it'll be billed as an amazing scientific experiment, you know, social and scientific experiment.
Well, you know, one of my guilty pleasures is watching Married at First Sight, Australia.
Yeah.
And I actually object to the concept, because I do think it does cheapen marriage, because the vast majority of them don't remain married, like 99%. But it is an interesting concept in itself, because they have these scientists that come up with sort of compatibility and do all the tests and put people together. And I think that's quite an interesting idea, but perhaps the marriage bit isn't necessary in there. Have either of you got views on maths?
So
I think, I mean, again, I think it's insane for two people to get married in such a short space of time. Whether they've met, whether they're in a box, whether they're behind a wall, whether they're in the dark having sex. I mean, I think what we're missing is that actually, you know, the decision to get married or even get into a committed relationship should be based on the reality of who that person is. And I think that's the thing that we're missing, most of us, in our dating lives and in our, you know, the process that we go through in order to get into a relationship.
Thanks, Kate. Thanks for your take on things. That's Kate Mansfield there. So from Married at First Sight to Rumpy Bumpy at First Sight. Watch, it's not even first sight because they're in the dark. You don't see anything.
The first touch. Oh.
Yeah.
Enough of that, I reckon. Let's talk about something a little bit less controversial.
Most distasteful.
The transgender row, as Bud Light are now criticised for using the model Dylan Mulvaney. All the details with Norman Baker and Davinia Taylor next.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
And we welcome back with your papers on this Tuesday morning, Norman Baker and Davinia Taylor. Very nice to see you both. Davinia, we start front page of the Financial Times, and it's a business story that will have a lot of social impact. This is Bud Light. Tell us more.
Yeah, so Bud Light have said that social media is to blame for the Bud Light sales plummeting when they put the transgender, I suppose, actor Dylan Mulvaney as their sort of face of. I think it was tone deaf, really, and they maybe got a bit excited about the new market they could capture with the transgender sort of wokeism. But it seems to have backfired because this particular transgender actor he makes a mockery of women. He prances around and it's like very girly and, oh, I've been shopping and all this. And it is ridiculous. It's panto, you know. And I think it actually sets people who want to transition back decades, because for me as a woman, I think, well, that's really condescending, and it's false, because women don't behave like that at all. And I think it also opens up the whole conversation about transgender in sport and how it's being ferociously fought. Like the Riley Gaines situation, she was a swimmer who swam against a chap called Leah Thomas, who's actually 6'4", full attire, and he beat her, obviously. I mean, my 15-year-old son can beat me. You know, so of course someone who is 6'4" is going to have an advantage. So I think it was very naive and obviously the pound signs were there for Bud Light, but
except they weren't there for Bud Light.
In the end.
Not in the end. It's completely backfired on them. And I think Nike also employed this guy as well, and it's like really tone deaf. They just saw dollar signs, and obviously it's backfired. And I'm kind of happy, really, that people are literally listening to this ridiculous sort of farcical that is meant to be female empowerment.
Interesting, because obviously there's an attempt to be inclusive, isn't there? But actually it's ended up offending
It's actually
everybody.
exclusive, yes.
Let's go to the Eye, page 4 here. A story about banks making profit at savers' expense.
Yes, we've had in the previous hour, when we talked, didn't we not, about the cost of living and how people were struggling with their bills and food bills and energy bills. So not everybody's struggling, because people in banks aren't struggling. You've seen a poor banker? I've not seen a poor banker. And what we see here is that while banks have made huge profits, and they're very keen to pass on the increases in interest rates to borrowers, they don't actually help savers. So, for example, we've now got borrowers, 1 million mortgage holders now being asked to pay 7.74% for their mortgage. But you've got many banks still paying below 1% on savings. That's just money for all rope, isn't it?
Yeah, and interest rates are set to rise again this week.
That's right.
So you do think, at what point can that be passed on to us folk? These banks, unbelievable. I can't disagree with you, Norman. Anyone else care to disagree?
No,
in which case,
absolutely not.
No, exactly.
I don't know about banks.
No. Should we talk about undergoing checks? This is in the Mail. High-tech scans that spot even tiny growths causing us more harm than good.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring this up because I'm the sort of person who wants to know, and I want to sort of attack everything head on. And I do understand the flip side of it. So there was a woman here who went in for a scan to check on IBS, and she found out that she had breast cancer, ended up having a mastectomy, and now she's cancer-free. But there's another chap who went in with a torn muscle in his gut, and they found that he had cancer, and he's now undergoing therapy. But he says he wished he'd never found out, because everything is about the cancer now, and his quality of life has gone. Also, the chemotherapy has impacted his quality of life. He's got all sorts of symptoms. So it's kind of like, you know, tech's there to help us, but it's like, do you want to know? Do you want to be proactive?
Do you not get given that question? You know, we're about to tell you, do you want to know or not?
I would have thought so, but it seemed apparently
I would want to know. Wouldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But what happens if it's like terminal? You know, but I was saying earlier, you know, whenever you do like sort of life insurance, they always talk about, well, you could be hit by a bus one day. And I'm like, that is just ridiculous. It's always, you're going to get hit by a bus tomorrow. And I'm like, who is this bus driver? Yeah. For God's sake, get him off the road. Yeah. But I think as technology expands, the more we're going to be able to future-proof our health. And personally, I'd want to know, because I know there's treatments out there that, you know, are groundbreaking. Yeah.
OK, and even if they weren't, even if it was terminal, you can prepare for your end, you can prepare for your death.
That's
you can
a gift in many ways.
Your affairs in order.
Exactly, admin. Oh, what a way to spend your last days, admin.
More say your goodbyes,
yeah.
You know.
Holiday, round the world, thank you.
Let the others do the admin.
Yes.
Norman, you're going to reflect now on the local government elections and the results there last week. This is from The Guardian.
And this is Labour's election gains show voters are desperate for change, according to the Labour leader. In his comments, which you've had scrolling at the bottom of the screen, the shadow cabinet, he said that the hardest part lies ahead. Actually, Labour's results in the local elections weren't particularly brilliant. I mean, they were OK. They made some gains, but actually the Lib Dems and Greens did a lot better than Labour. And I think what that showed was, while people are unhappy with the Tories, there's no enthusiasm for Starmer. And what does he actually stand for? On The Guardian online this morning, I saw, before I came here this morning, there's a headline which is headed Here, There and Everywhere, which is about not knowing what he stands for, which I love as a headline because I'm a Beatles fan. That's a part of the Beatles song. But, you know, that's true.
That's part of what he's trying to do, though, isn't it? I mean, he's trying to kind of remove himself from the hard left reputation of his predecessor and become a bit more middle ground, and it's going to be your job, the Lib Dems, to try and woo them into a possible coalition, because they've already said they're not interested.
I think we've had enough of coalitions, to be honest with you.
Oh, you're ruling out a coalition, are you?
Well, I personally am. But, I mean, I don't know if the party is or not. But the point is about Starmer is he's not setting out a vision. Whatever you think about him, he's not setting out a vision. He's criticising the government for this and for that. And if the government starts recovering, and if Rishi Sunak starts pulling the things round again, then why would you go for Labour? Because you don't know what they stand for. So I think he's in a dangerous situation. He needs to set out a vision. He hasn't done so.
OK. Snoring, Davinia.
Yes.
I don't know if you suffer from it or not.
Well, my husband breathes deeply, apparently. But I just was rather interested that it affects 15 million people. And, you know, I've been looking... I'm into health and everything like that and hacking around it. And this chap here, David Cox, has tried tongue zapping, different special mattresses, breathing classes, nasal spray. But I follow a guy called Joe Rogan, and he was chatting to Jordan Peterson about the carnivore diet, which is basically a meat-only diet, and that stops snoring completely.
Why? How come?
It just reduces systemic inflammation. So even if you've got arthritis, the carnivore diet will stop that. So Michaela Peterson, who's Jordan's daughter, she only has the lion diet, which is just steak. And she had arthritis.
I mean, yeah, but you're going to get vitamin deficiencies and things.
No,
I suppose you'll get
not
that thing that all the sailors used to get when they got bow legs. Yeah.
No, you don't. I mean,
if you just eat meat, you're okay.
Yes, you are. It's the most nutrient-dense thing on the planet, like beef liver. I mean, it's a bit, it's not very tasty, I know, but that is one of the most nutrient-dense. And you can have fish as well, of course. Oysters are extremely nutrient-dense. I mean, it's pretty brutal, but if you're snoring, or actually, I'm going to get Matthew to just go complete carnivore for a week and see what happens. But you'll also lose weight and everything like that. But I'm just interested to see, you know, in fact, there's another hack where you can just put a piece of tape over your mouth and your body will automatically switch to nasal breathing while you're asleep. And after a couple of weeks, your body will naturally do that as well.
What's tongue zapping?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's just painful.
What is it?
He literally just zaps his tongue and it's trying to reset the brain mechanism so you're not like this.
Well, you put something on your tongue?
Yeah, like an electrical shock.
Oh, God.
Oh, it's lovely.
Goodness
lovely.
me.
But, I mean, I'd just eat meat. Eat meat is the
You've got to have... Come back to Isabel's point. You need to have some vitamin C. You need some oranges or something. Otherwise, all the sailors in years gone by all got scurvy. There's plenty of meat on board ship.
I mean, I would argue that you would have to have some berries or something.
Yeah, balanced diet.
But, I mean, I lean towards a heavy meat diet anyway.
Do you?
Yeah, extremely, yeah. Very
There are
low on
lots
veg.
of worries about red meat and links to cancer, bowel cancer.
No, that's been debunked.
Has it?
Yeah.
Crikey.
I know, yeah.
I'm very tolerant of snoring. I don't... I am very
What are you
tolerant.
about guilty of it, perhaps?
No, I'm not guilty of it, but my wife never stops. She works morning,
I thought you
noon,
said
and
never
night.
stop snoring.
And then she goes to bed. And when she goes to bed, my wife is the sort of person, you see, for instance, I don't think I slept a wink last night. I just, just lay there, couldn't try to sleep, nothing happened, whatever. My wife, her head hits the pillow, gone, out for a count. As a gift. I do think
I think that the snoring makes me jealous. I'm like, how dare you be asleep before me? So that's my problem with the snoring.
And deep. But my
Do you
wife...
ever just try and roll her over? Because that's
It's
you do
a lot
hear
of weight to move.
Stop it.
It's a lot.
But you do hear about couples where usually the man's snoring and the woman starts rolling them onto their side.
It's like a ton weight. And then you're just
No, she'd elbow me in the face with that.
gosh.
But but I'm happy for her when she snores
That's
because
so sweet. That is literally the sweetest thing you've ever said.
I'm really hostile.
Yeah, because she just never stops. I look at her and even her relaxation, if she takes a day off, it's spent clearing out her knicker drawer or whatever she's doing. She never stops, literally.
Really?
And I've never ever come home and she's sitting with a box of Maltesers watching, a matinee on television or whatever it happens to be. Nope. So I love her when she sleeps, and it's really I'm very pleased for her. Very pleased for her.
Yeah, well, that's love.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It's just.
Well, let's not. You were doing so well. Let's leave it at that. Norman, water company dividends have doubled, and this is whilst they're pouring rubbish into our rivers.
Yes, and this is the second story from the front page of the Financial Times. It's obviously the paper to read today.
Well, there's nothing else but coronation on the rest.
And it's a second incident following on the banks and their profiteering about people making money out of people who really need to be helped. Because what we're seeing is Britain's privatised water companies and sewage companies have more than doubled dividends to 1.4 billion in 2022, up from 540 million the previous year. The article said they've been running rings around Ofwat. Thames Water, the largest monopoly, paid £37 million of internal dividends this year. In the meantime, of course, what we've seen is water bills rocketing, and we've seen sewage being dumped in our rivers on a non-stop basis, and the government actually do nothing about it.
Is that normal, internal dividends? I don't really understand.
Internal dividends, well, the paragraph says Thames Water paid internal dividends to its parent company in the year to March 2022, up from £35 million the year before, despite saying external shareholders had received no dividends.
Right,
so they're
so
pretending that there's no dividends, and
that's
actually they classified them as internal.
Ooh. Well done, the FT.
I think it's a fair analysis to say that the water companies run rings around Ofwat.
Yes, they do. Ofwat is particularly ineffective as a regulator.
Like so many of them.
I'm afraid so.
Guys, for the moment, thank you very much indeed. Norman and Davinia will be back in 40 minutes' time. The time 12 minutes before 8 o'clock.
Let's bring you up to date with the rest of today's top stories. And pharmacists are to be able to give prescription medicine without a GP sign-off to try and ease the pressure on appointments. The Prime Minister says the plan, set to come into place this winter, will see treatment for 7 common conditions, including earache, sore throats and urinary tract infections, being available without seeing a doctor.
The Metropolitan Police says it regrets arresting 6 anti-monarchy protesters ahead of the coronation. The leader of the protest group Republic was amongst those detained, but police said they were unable to prove intent to disrupt.
And a Ukrainian band led thousands in a call of glory to Ukraine during a performance in Liverpool as part of the Eurovision Song Contest. Children were hoisted upon shoulders and wrapped in Ukrainian flags, while others wore hats and T-shirts featuring the national colours of blue and yellow. Crikey.
Knife crime, one of the major issues that we report on, and one of which the government is struggling to tackle.
With far too many young people dying due to knife violence, one former gang member in Hastings is now determined to offer life-saving solutions.
Our South East of England reporter Ray Addison with the story.
On the corner of Battle and Old Church Roads in Hastings, a pair of boxing gloves hang from a tree, a memorial to 16-year-old Connor Ansell, who was fatally stabbed on this spot in 2017. Kyle Miller was Connor's best friend.
We got boxing gloves, a pair of Connor's shoes, and a plaque here with his name on it. So to us, to Connor's friends and family, this is where we come on his anniversary day.
Connor was stabbed in the stomach with a hunting knife with a 25-centimetre blade.
They ran up behind him and he had no idea it was happening. They've ended up coming around this corner here, and it was this bank here actually where they fell.
His killer, who was just 17, was sentenced to 9 years for manslaughter.
It's a hard place for me because it's sort of like lets the realisation sink in of what's actually happened. Something I've never wanted to accept or tried to accept. So I just, I tend to not come here.
Although knife crime is actually decreasing across Sussex as a whole, Hastings is bucking that trend, with offences going up by 2%. One man trying to prevent more needless deaths is former gang member Carl Scott. A victim of knife crime himself, today Carl is installing an emergency bleed kit in Hastings town centre.
The whole point of this box is it's about prevention, and catastrophic bleeds are what kill you. And if we've got a piece of kit like what I've got here that can help stem a bleed until the ambulance service arrives, then let's put them up all over the place.
The kit contains everything you need to pack and stem a bleed, including a battlefield-strength tourniquet. But Carl admits he's struggled to find locations willing to take them due to the stigma attached.
It's taken me just over 6 months. I've contacted numerous businesses to have this kit up. Nobody wants to admit that we've got a knife crime issue.
However, Carl's initiative does have the support of Sussex Police. Simon Yates is the force's Detective Chief Inspector.
I think it should be seen as a positive thing and not something to raise fear in the community, for sure. They're there to help. If they're not needed, we won't use them. But actually, having it locally could potentially save someone's life. And if it saves one person's life, it's worth having, isn't it? So I'd definitely like to see more.
Although nothing can bring Connor Ansell back to his friends and family, Kyle hopes that one day they can install a bleed kit here at Connor's tree.
It'd be amazing, you know, to have one here especially. I feel like Connor would be proud of that. It'd be good.
Ray Addison, GB News.
Something good coming out of what's been quite plainly really traumatic and really admirable, really great.
Government big initiative today is called the Primary Care Plan, and the Prime Minister's talking about more investment in chemists and chemist shops to free up GP appointments.
But first, Craig Snell has your Tuesday forecast.
Hello there, welcome to your GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. I'm Craig Snell. Having a look at today, really it's a mixture of sunshine and scattered showers, and some of these showers will be quite heavy and thundery. It's all down to this area low pressure, which is actually not going to go very far over the next few days, giving a rather changeable week across many parts of the UK. But in any sunshine, it should feel fairly warm if you are out and about. So if we start Tuesday, a quite grey start actually for a lot of the UK. Still some overnight rain to contend with initially, but some sunshine will develop as the morning goes on, but this will allow some showers to readily form, and especially as we go into the afternoon, these showers will turn quite heavy and thundery, and also quite slow moving in places, especially across parts of England and Wales. So could produce quite a lot of surface spray on the road, so do take some extra time for your journeys, especially as we approach the evening rush hour. But in the sunshine, feeling fairly warm, could see highs reaching 20 or 21 degrees down towards the southeast corner. The showers will rumble on as we go into the evening, but for most it should turn drier and clearer for a time as we approach midnight. But then later on, this next band of rain and showers will spread into many western parts. So for many eastern areas, actually a cooler night than the night just gone, but out towards the west with this, thanks to this next area of cloud, another mild one to come with lows not falling much lower than around 10 to 11 degrees. So after some sunshine in the east at first on Wednesday, really it goes downhill once again from the west as this next spell of rain and showers spreads its way eastwards across the country. Again, we could see some heavy and torrential downpours in places and the risk of thunder at times. Perhaps maybe some longer spells of rain too across Scotland and Northern Ireland. Temperatures a little bit down on today, but still around average for the time of year. And very little changes actually on Thursday, another day of sunshine and scattered showers. But hopefully, as we approach the weekend, something a little bit drier coming through with temperatures maybe also climbing just that little bit.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m. Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Skip the GP for common illnesses, says the Prime Minister, as he launches a new plan to free up millions of appointments.
A very good morning to you. It's just before 8 o'clock on Tuesday, the 9th of May. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Nice to have you on board, wherever you're watching or listening, leading the news this morning.
Rishi Sunak will announce today that 7 million GP appointments a year could be made available under a £645 million plan, which would give pharmacists the power to provide medicines without a GP appointment. The Minister of Primary Care told us this morning the move would make a drastic improvement.
So if you've got a really sore throat or earache or a rash or something like that, you'll be able to go to a pharmacist, get quick treatment, and they'll be able to prescribe antibiotics as well.
The Metropolitan Police has expressed regret over the arrest of anti-monarchy activists ahead of the coronation. The leader of the protest group Republic was amongst those detained, but police said they were unable to prove intent to disrupt.
And the King and the Queen have paid tribute to the millions of people who celebrated the coronation this weekend, saying the nation's support is the greatest gift. It comes as the first official photograph of the newly crowned monarchs are released.
And just also to say to you, if you watch our little programme and you like what you see or hear, you can vote for GB News, the breakfast show in particular, in the Reality TV Awards. Well, the reason we say the breakfast show, because it is the one that's nominated, so you can only vote for who is nominated. So that's one award ceremony, and then the other one is the Television Radio Industry Club, otherwise known as the Trick Awards, which is a very prestigious big bash.
Yes.
Isabel gets her best frock out for that one.
They both depend on public votes, so we'd love it if you get your votes in. Don't forget to vote for Eamonn, Best News Presenter category at the Tricks. He won it last year by a country mile, and we're very much hoping he does the same again.
Well, as Sir Alex Ferguson always said, winning a trophy is one thing, defending it is tougher.
Yes.
He thought. But no, it's nice. It's such a thrill for us to actually, first of all, think that anybody watches us, because we come on here in the morning and anybody we get, we think, gosh, that's a surprise, that's extra. And it's been absolutely amazing, the amount of you that have watched, and particularly, could we just say, the coronation coverage last week, which just rolled like a snowball, and you seem to love all that you saw on the channel throughout the day.
Indeed, so keep those votes coming in.
I'd vote for you.
No, I will vote for you. I haven't yet. I'll do it later. I mean it. To our top story then this morning, the Prime Minister is to launch a new plan to free up 7 million GP appointments a year by allowing people to seek treatment for common conditions at pharmacies.
Now, this follows an announcement yesterday of an overhaul to GP booking systems, right? So they say they're going to get new phone, switchboards put into surgeries all around the country. I'm not sure how that means that it ends the demand for appointments. But they said, we'll have a new switchboard put in. And the man who said that to us was the Minister for Primary Care. He's Neil O'Brien. And he said the government was making positive progress in expanding the role of pharmacies.
There are more pharmacies than there were when we came to office, and this investment that we're making today of another 645 million is exactly responding to those pressures, and it's responding to something that a lot of pharmacists have said to me, which is that they want to do more. They want to do more proper clinical work and advanced services, and by making this big investment today, we're going to enable just that, and so that will take some of the pressure off pharmacies as well as taking the pressure off GPs. But the other thing that we're doing today is making another big investment, about £240 million in new technology for GPs, because we know it's so frustrating for people and really terrible if you ring your GP and you can't get through. And that's why we're spending the equivalent of about £60,000 per practice on new technology so that we upgrade their phones and you never get an engaged tone again, and that we also give them really good online access, partly to free up the phones and partly because that's a really convenient way of getting in touch with your GP as well for a lot of people. So as well as the big investment in pharmacy to take the pressure off, we're also investing in technology and also going to carry on growing the number of appointments and growing the workforce as well.
Let's get the latest on this. We go to Downing Street. Our political reporter Olivia Utley on this one. Right, so what's the objective? The thing is, Olivia, both Isabel and I were saying we've heard these sort of proposals many times over the years from different administrations. What's different this time?
Well, there isn't much that's particularly different this time. The Prime Minister is hoping that it's going to free up to 30,000 GP appointments a day, and it will end the 8 a.m. scramble. The difference, I suppose, now is that 8 a.m. scramble has become a huge part of primary healthcare in the UK. Everyone knows that in order to get a GP appointment, you must call up at 8 o'clock in the morning. The problem is, well, there are a couple of problems. One of them is that this, although it will free up an awful lot of GP appointments over the course of a year, it still only counts for 3% of the total GP appointments that are in demand. So it's not going to have a huge impact particularly quickly. The other problem, of course, is that GPs are supposed to be the final gateway to the overprescription of antibiotics. And quite a lot of these the 7 common health conditions which will now be able to be treated by a pharmacist are conditions which will need antibiotics: urinary tract infections, sore throats, chest infections, etc. So that could store up problems for the Prime Minister later down the line. On the whole, though, this proposal has been greeted, welcomed really by health groups. And what the Prime Minister is hoping that if he does this, if he pushes ahead, it's one of his 5 goals, one of those 5 pillars that he keeps talking about, then he will show that he is delivering. And after the local elections fiasco last week, that is what Rishi Sunak keeps talking about. He's saying to his closest advisors and cabinet colleagues that if he just keeps his head down and keeps delivering on those 5 promises, then he'll be able to reverse what happened last week in time for the next general election. Whether this plan will go any way to doing that, we'll have to wait and see.
It's interesting, all of this, Olivia, because the Prime Minister's father was a doctor in the NHS, his mother was a pharmacist. If anyone understands this, I think he even worked in the pharmacy, didn't he, sometimes during the summer holidays? Surely the Prime Minister does. And yet, in a moment, just after speaking to you, we'll be speaking to somebody from the pharmaceutical industry, from pharmacies, and they say there's a £1.1 billion shortfall in their funding, and they also say that the number of pharmacies are down to 2015 levels. So it's surprising for someone who's sort of well known for being sort of managerial in style and under the bonnet of issues to not have addressed that.
Well, yes, absolutely. And this plan that he's announcing today will cost £645 million over the next 2 years. But critics say that simply isn't enough to make up for that shortfall of pharmacy numbers. To go with the plan that he's announcing today, he is also talking about increasing the number of GP places over the next few years. And he's hoping to be able to increase that number by 50% with the training places, with a funding increase. So he is drilling down now into those shortages of both GPs and pharmacists, but critics feel that it's just a bit too little, a bit too late.
Find out more about that. Olivia, thank you very much indeed. We introduce you to Dr. Leila Hanbeck, and she is the boss of the Association of Independent multiple pharmacies. Very nice to see you, Doctor. I think I need to go and see a doctor now. I'm sitting coughing here. Dr. Hanbeck, so here's the thing. Everybody's talking about doctors, as in GP surgeries. And it's as if you pharmacists have been twiddling your thumbs, whistling for customers to come in and give you this extra business because you've got nothing else to do. It's just like, I've heard all this before. I know the pressures, because I know a number of chemists, and I know the pressures that community pharmacists are under, and we talked about the underfunding there. I don't know how much that pharmacies have been consulted on all of this and what it would take to make this work, but I certainly know that you're not stuck for work to do at the moment.
Oh, definitely not. I mean, we have had so much impact piled up on us over the past few years. It's been a case when there's been pressure on GPs, and the whole culture has been, okay, so let's pile on some more work onto pharmacies. But the good news is that this time, in terms of like what the plans are with regards to what Prime Minister wants to achieve, is that these common ailments that are coming through pharmacies are funded. So it's not something that pharmacists doing extra work for nothing. So that's the good news. And also we have been saying for many years that we were very much willing to support the NHS wherever possible. But it's been a case of our calls have not been listened to, and in fact, if anything, pharmacists have been put more under pressure by not having the relevant funding that we require to carry out on the normal job, the day-to-day job. So it's been a very hard period for a lot of community pharmacies, and as you reported, many closed their doors since 2015, which is very sad.
Can I ask you, sort of personal question, and not specifically directed at you, but about your profession? We've heard the government defending their changes to tax rules when it comes to pensions to try and keep senior doctors within the profession. And we've heard a lot about whether or not doctors should be paid more. There have been these ongoing strikes. Are, pharmacists being well compensated for this increase in workload?
Well, the problem that we have is that obviously over 90% of what independent pharmacists do is very much related to NHS. It's NHS activities compensated by the NHS. And doctors are GP surgeries are private businesses, as well as pharmacists. But because we are on the high street, people think that we are not having anything to do with the NHS, whilst 90% of our activities are NHS funded. However, since 2015, we had a funding cut, and on top of that, we were then landed with a contract 4 years ago that did not take into account the inflation, the astronomical rise in cost of medicines, and all the workforce pressures and everything else. So we've been under a lot of pressure. And as you know, Isabel, we've been keeping our doors open for, over the pandemic period. So it's been consistent, having that patient care going on. So it's good to see that the government has agreed to put this £645 million over the 2-year period into community pharmacy funding for getting these services that they want us to deliver, rather than it coming from the current pot, which they have been doing in the past.
Is it still the same profession that you entered, though, when you trained? I mean, do you think it's still a great career? When I think of Rishi Sunak, he talks a lot about his father being a GP, his mother being a pharmacist. Obviously, they did very well because they had 3 children and he went to £45,000 a year Winchester College, didn't he? So they have obviously done well out of it. I mean, is it still a nice career path if you were to speak to an aspiring pharmacist?
But it can be a great career path because it's got everything. It's got the clinical side of things, it's got the patient element, face-to-face patient element, and it's a great profession to be in. And also going down the route, if you're we're doing the prescribing services as well, so we are going to be more and more involved into prescribing prescriptions and so on, and being that accessibility that patients really like. But it has been really tough over the past few years, and if nothing is done, because there's a lot of pressure on us as pharmacists, and if nothing is done, we are going to see a lot of people walking out of this profession, but also many pharmacists closing the doors quickly.
Doctor, as brief as you can, just this final question. Obviously, the difference between a GP surgery and a high street pharmacy will become less and less. You'll be doing more of the work that they used to do. But how long would it take before the man and woman on the street will notice a difference in that they are being tended to more efficiently and quicker?
But these services that have been published, they don't happen overnight. So we need to put all the infrastructures in place and also manage, the training and everything else that needs to go with it to implement. It's not going to happen overnight, but it's great to see that patients have now that accessibility to come to walk to the local pharmacy and be able to get the service that they require. And we work very closely with GPs as well on that front.
Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Leila Hanbeck, Chief Executive of the Association of Independent and Multiple Pharmacies. Appreciate your time and your analysis on things. Thank you.
Now we're going to talk about something totally novel, a deposit-free mortgage that will be specifically aimed at people currently renting is being launched by Skipton Building Society. OK, so the North Yorkshire company says while its deal requires a good credit history, it does not need a guarantor. So what do we think of this? Let's speak to property expert Jonathan Rowland with his thoughts on all of this. Jonathan, well, this is different.
Hello, good morning, Eamonn. It's different but the same. It's a repeat of something that was offered and brought to a close in about 2008 when the property market crashed, as you might remember, I'm sure you do. So it's actually not a new product, it's just something that's being rolled out. Once again, it was making up less than 0.5% of all mortgages lent in recent years. After 2008, we saw then 125% loans to value. 100% was very common, and it has now been brought back, I think, to try and solve the problem of the housing market.
But it was ruled out with good reason, wasn't it, after the 2008 credit crunch, because people were overextending themselves. Is that not still a risk now, especially as for the first time in many years we've started to see a few vulnerabilities appearing within certain banking sectors?
Absolutely, a few vulnerabilities there, and of course within the housing market. So there is, you're right, Isabel, a great danger in lending these out willy-nilly. I think if they're targeted very carefully to people who can show a very good credit history and have some special circumstances, then it's not a bad thing. People, all want to own their own homes, and if they've been paying a mortgage that's, a rent that's equivalent to a mortgage, then why not? But my concern would be if somebody hasn't been able to save up even just a few £1,000s over a number of years, what would happen if they do buy a property with a 100% mortgage? They're calling them no deposit or deposit-free loans. They're actually 100% mortgages. I think they've sort of rebranded it. What will happen if they have an unexpected bill or a change in circumstances where perhaps one of the couple, if it's a couple, can't work or loses their job or something like that? What will happen then? And of course, with rental, there's a lot more support from the government compared to owning a property. So if you lose work, it's possible to get housing benefit, and that's much more difficult with an ownership.
Jonathan, what do you expect the uptake to be for Skipton? Will this be good business for them? And I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, well, this isn't necessarily age-related, for instance. It's not particularly for young people. It's not particularly for people at the end of their work careers or whatever. Who will be the beneficiaries?
I think really the beneficiary will be Skipton. They're getting a lot of publicity from this, and they'll no doubt take a lot of inquiries. And it will be then up to them to pick the very best of those inquiries and lend, I suspect, a relatively small amount of money to a relatively small number of people. But it's a case really where people are stuck in properties. Rents have gone up so much. I mean, in London, 20% increases in a year aren't uncommon. And so it's not surprising, really. There are many people paying thousands and thousands a month in rent. But of course, that affects their ability to be able to save. So this is why I think this product has been rolled out.
was going to refer to the fact that 700,000 households across the UK missed out on rent or mortgage repayments last month, and it's the first time the figure's been so high, and that's got to be worrying in the context of what we're talking about.
It is, absolutely. I mean, it illustrates exactly what's going on, and is this really the time to be lending 100% again after what we may have learned in 2008? I'm sure Skipton will come up with a lot of good reasons why it makes perfect sense, but there is a risk to it. And I think that the 700,000 people having trouble already is probably just the tip of the iceberg. It's going to only get worse.
Jonathan Rowland, thank you very much indeed for your analysis. Jonathan's a property expert, live to us from Worthing this morning. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you very much.
At the time.
Sorry for
Go on.
speaking across you there.
It's okay.
Just the last time when we were speaking to the chemist lady, and you said, I'd like to ask you something personal. I thought, here, she's going to ask about the rash.
Oh, the rash. Is it spreading? Is it visible?
Whatever. I thought, surely it's going to be a clinic.
No, I didn't want to ask her what she earned, but I wanted to get an insight into, is it comparable with what a GP's paid, for example, if they're shouldering some of the same responsibility?
No. Chemists benefit, being rather controversial here, and I've known a lot of chemists in my time. They have a shop as well, so they can benefit. They're not just like a GP paid for their profession; they're paid for running their little shop. The thing I don't understand about chemist shops is
Very expensive.
But why do they do things like, why do they sell balloons and windmills for kids and, boats? And some of them sell really weird and strange things. You go in for a hairbrush and you could leave with a brush for the kitchen, your floor or something.
We've gone in for a chickenpox vaccination for our kids and they've been given sweeties, and I thought, that can't be right.
Yes, they do.
Healthy on one hand, unhealthy on the other.
Yeah. But anyway, so it's a little business as well.
Yeah.
But you see, what I like about the chemist, and it's very important for the high street in general, I'm not. You lose the intimacy when you get a big chain opening up a chemist on the high street. It's different. But if you have a local independent pharmacy, you go in, and honestly, I could stand there and people just talk to me all day. I said, if you're waiting to collect your prescription,
the queue would be 15 long, and you'd be like, what's your name? Where are you from now?
Yes, and Eamonn, what's wrong with you, Eamonn? You're expected to tell everybody all your deepest intimacies.
Oh, you'd be so bad at that. It'd be quite funny.
But the amount of people that do ask you what's wrong with you.
Yeah, well, that's with affection. Are you okay?
Well, you can't tell them every private thing that's wrong with you.
I don't realise. Anyway.
Yes, it's coming up to 8:20. In fact, it is exactly now 8:20. Isabel will now bring you the rest of today's top stories.
The Met Police says it regrets arresting 6 anti-monarchy protesters ahead of the coronation. The leader of the protest group Republic was amongst those detained, but police said they were unable to prove intent to disrupt.
Pensioners on low incomes have just 10 days to claim credit and qualify for the latest £301 cost of living payment. Users can check their eligibility by using an online pension credit calculator by the 19th of May. And bearing in mind, today is what? Today is the
9th.
The 9th, is it? 9th, yes, that's 10 days' time. 10 days you've got for that.
And Birmingham Airport's been named the worst in the UK for flight delays, and that's for the second year in a row. The Civil Aviation Authority says departures from the airport were on average half an hour behind schedule last year.
On the subject of airports, if you go to my Twitter account, it says location, and it is usually at an airport. Well, that used to be until I became incapacitated. Although I have to say, the people that take you mobility-wise through the airport are very, very good, very caring, very, very good. But airports, what gets on my goat is the same duty-free things. First of all, why does anybody want to buy duty-free? Never, never, ever in my life have I ever gone through an airport and said, I want to buy that bottle of gin.
Oh, you haven't met my husband.
Well, but then, so on top of everything else,
holiday
on top of everything else you get, people buy themselves bottles of things.
Yeah.
I can't carry what I set out with. Why am I going to carry all this as well?
Car seats and then a rattling bag of bottles.
To save, 35p or something like that. Right, so there's that aspect, and they all look the same. These places are all the same. And then they have this awful yellow brick road thing that winds round. So that's obvious, and I don't like that at all. What else do I not like at airports? There's lots of things that aren't like at airports. There aren't. So when you go to certain airports and there's nowhere to wait, nowhere to sit down while you're waiting on the plane at the gate.
Bristol Airport's a lovely little airport. I like its proximity to the city. You can land and be home in 15, 20 minutes.
I like Southampton Airport. I think it's called Eastleigh.
Right.
And the train comes right to the front door, and you literally right to the front door, you cross the zebra crossing and away you go. Did I ever tell you about checking into Belfast City Airport, now known as George Best Airport, one night, and a terrible storm was raging. And I was blown off my feet practically. I got out of the car and I walked across the zebra crossing, and walking the other direction was all this wind and whatever. Right? And walking across at me through the wind and the rain.
Who was it?
A penguin. Right? So this penguin was waddling towards me right across. And I said, "Hello, penguin." And the penguin looked at me, just sort of nodded to me, and I went inside. So I said to the security guy inside, "Hey, there's a penguin out there." He says, "Catch yourself on, there's not a penguin out there." So I checked in at the desk and I said to the girl, "There's a penguin out there." She said, "Oh, yeah, we get them all the time." And apparently it wasn't a penguin, but it was a penguin's cousin.
Puffin?
No, I forget what it was called. But anyway, they looked like penguins, and the storm had washed it in, because Belfast Airport's built on a lock, and Belfast Lock, and it came in off an island. So it did.
Well, so it wasn't packing up to go on his holidays.
But you know, a radio station started to phone around and find out if there were any penguins missing from Belfast Zoo or anything. Excuse me, I'm telling a story. This is my producer telling me to
They don't need to know.
Don't even need to know. And they phoned around all the other the zoos and things in Belfast and whatever, and there were no penguins missing. So it was a rogue penguin outside.
Oh my goodness, a wild one.
A wild one.
I had a wild encounter yesterday.
Yes?
I was having a picnic on a bench in Kew Gardens, and a fox came as close to me as you are, and we couldn't eat our picnic.
Mr. Fox.
So my husband got up and chased it around the bush, which the children thought was hilarious. And then the fox ran around the other side of the bush and came back towards us. And actually, after a while, we decided this isn't that funny. So we just got up and moved on.
Did you not feed the little fox?
No, because, I mean, they're dangerous. They're wild animals.
You're very heartless.
No.
If I would have fed my penguin.
Actually, do you know why that fox was so brave?
Why?
Because people like you have been obviously feeding them. And it's all going to end in tears.
My little dog looks like a fox.
Yes, but it's not.
But it's black.
That's a domesticated animal that is used to human contact. Foxes should only be seen in the dark. This was in the middle of the day, approaching children.
My dog is a cross between a border collie and a dachshund, which makes it look like a black fox. Well, it does. It looks like a little short legs, long tail, whatever. Yeah. But anyway, I would have fed it. I would have fed a little ginger version of my dog. Now, what have we got next?
Well, we are going to have all the drama from yesterday's intense relegation battle, including Everton's 5-1 demolition of Brighton.
Who would have put money on that? No, I mean, that was a turn-up for the books.
Aidan McGee will have all the details.
OK, next.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, 8:29. Still to come on today's programme.
We're going to talk to the Chief Executive of the Royal Voluntary Service about the success of yesterday's big help out. So it encouraged celebrating the coronation by taking up volunteering.
And then just after 9 o'clock, we have the newspaper editor Eve Pollard giving us her take on the big stories of the day, including the PM's plan to free up 15 million GP appointments.
And you can join in, and you've been very good at joining by getting in touch the usual way on the PM's appointment plan. John says, I think it's great news if pharmacies can prescribe medication. The advantage is that you get better service quicker. In my view, waiting for the doctor will make it worse and take longer to clear the queues up. This may mean, which may lead to unnecessary time off work. Yeah, we get the idea. More efficient. And we were saying, get rid of all this business of being referred, having to get an appointment with your GP to be referred to a specialist.
Surely you can do more stuff online. Just click. You need to have something, your prescription renewed, and surely it could be printed out at home. I don't understand.
Well, we don't understand, do you? On this Tuesday morning, this is the way the back pages look. Star, first of all, here we go again ahead of City's Champions League semi-final with Real Madrid tonight. The Mirror carried Pep Guardiola's comments telling his players to forget revenge, just win. And the Mail, the dramatic relegation battle yesterday, Everton 5-1. They were away to Brighton. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? Aidan McGee with us now. When I saw it 3-0 at half-time, I just couldn't believe it. Brighton, one of the best teams in the league. They play beautiful passing football, have great possession.
At home?
At home. Everton can do nothing anywhere, really, and they're 3-0 up by half-time.
Well, it helps if you get a goal in the first minute, I guess. They travelled well as well. There was a little bit of a spring in their step yesterday. I mean, a crazy day yesterday, Eamonn. I mean, just in the Premier League alone, 3 matches produced 21 goals. Now, that kind of result is the kind of result you get in the first week of the season when the players are not necessarily at peak fitness, they're not necessarily match fit.
Ian, do you know what I think? I mean, I was watching Man United against West Ham, and I looked at us and I think we're running on empty. Brighton played us midweek. I would say they, again, are running on empty. That's the only thing that could explain that.
Yeah, well, it shouldn't be a surprise. We had a massive World Cup in the middle of the season, so the fixtures are concertina at either side of it. You ask anybody in sports science at any football club, they will tell you the amount of games played by the players is what influences their performances thereon. And fans don't necessarily realise it. They often accuse of being, well, the professional athletes should be able to do it. If you're seeing an inferior performance in the last month of the season, put it down to the World Cup. Sam Allardyce will tell you that.
No, I absolutely agree with you.
No doubt about it.
You know, even I notice, you know, your team's on television, but you think, they're on again tonight? They're on again tonight? And again, and again?
I quite like that, though.
Yeah, I suppose so. There's nothing not...
But, yeah, that was a brilliant result for Everton. I mean, Nottingham Forest, there was pressure on them because their regional rivals, Leicester, were beaten 5-3 earlier in the day by Fulham, so that put pressure on them to make ground up on them. Everton, obviously, their rivals in the table, they go and win and score 5 goals at Brighton, as we mentioned, and so they have to produce a performance from the gods as well, beating Southampton 4-3. Didn't have it all their own way, but Southampton now on 24 points. I think they're going to end their 11-year stay in the Premier League. In fact, they could get relegated against Fulham on Saturday. We look at the 4 teams above that, Leeds, Leicester, Everton, Nottingham Forest. It's looking at 2 teams from that 4, I would have thought. I think West Ham are too high above that now.
I agree with you. Who would you put your money on to go down?
It changes every day. I think...
Leeds?
No, I think Sam might do something there. I think you saw a little bit of it. He was very clever last week. That stuff, putting himself against Pochettino and Klopp and all these guys, it took the pressure off his players and they gave a better performance at Manchester City. Everyone's got difficult fixtures. If I was going to be... I still think Forest might go, and I think Leeds, I think Leicester and Everton might stay up. But that will change by tomorrow.
OK. Let's go to the Championship playoff just before we get to the Champions League tonight. So the playoff positions are all being fought.
They've been settled now yesterday. So, again, I mean, look, we see Millwall had a huge chance to get... They hadn't been in the top flight since 1990. They were 3-1 up at half-time. All they had to do was win their game. They lose 4-3 against Blackburn. And the playoffs now in the playoff semi-finals, we've got Sunderland, who've had a wretched time for the last 10 years. They're in there with a chance. They won yesterday at Preston. Luton Town, winners of the League Cup in 1988. They're in with a chance at getting back to the Premier League for the first time since 1992. Coventry won the FA Cup in 1987, of course, not been in the Premier League since 2001. So we could see, it just shows how football is cyclical. You know, you wait your time, you get your club in order, you can suddenly get a chance to get back at the big time, and that's going to be entertaining. We've got a Wembley final at the end of the month. As well. And Middlesbrough, Michael Carrick, of course.
Yeah, ex-Man United player.
Absolutely.
Mark Robbins at Coventry, ex-Man
Fantastic
United
job.
player.
What a fantastic job he has done. Luton have been in non-league, so they were non-league 10 years ago. No one's gone from non-league to the Premier League before. Coventry City, with all the problems over their ground and ownership, they were in League 2 7 years ago. And I think both those teams have still got players from their League 2 days.
Big night tonight for Man City. They are away from home tonight against Real Madrid. Tell us what you think.
Well, that's crucial because last year they played... Man City took a 5-3 lead at the Bernabeu with 17 minutes to go with a great goal by Riyad Mahrez, hammered it into the net. It looked for all the world as if they were into the Champions League final against Liverpool, but Madrid in the Champions League plundered 3 goals from absolutely nowhere, having been out of the game, and that did for them. What's interesting is that there seems to be mixed messages within the squad. Pep Guardiola says on the back of the Express, revenge, get real. It'll be stupid looking for revenge. Meanwhile, Rodri, his player, says we want revenge. So they're motivated by that. City will never have a better chance than this year to win the Champions League. PSG have been weak this year. Bayern have been weak. Barcelona have been weak. Liverpool weren't good in the Champions League. Chelsea are in disarray. It's a huge opportunity. Not saying they won't be strong next year, of course, but with the first leg being away from home and the home one to come, I think that could be pivotal. And they want to crest their way. They're winning games left, right and centre. I think they'll do it tonight.
Well, the only problem is Real Madrid in the
Champions League.
In the Champions League.
Exactly.
Be some game. Aidan McGee, thank you very much.
Good to see you, Eamonn.
Indeed for your roundup. Thank you very much. We'll hit the break. Stay with us. Birmingham Airport has been called out for being the worst for flight delays. Norman Baker, Davinia Taylor with the newspapers. You won't have to wait long for those after this.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m. Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good to see you again. The time coming up to 20 to 9.
We're going through the papers this morning, joined by the former Lib Dem Minister, Norman Baker, and the actress and wellbeing guru, Davinia Taylor, for one last look through the papers. Norman, should we start with airport delays? Brace yourself for delays at the worst airports, says the Times.
Yes, and the headline is that the worst airport for delays is Birmingham, where your average wait is 30 minutes beyond where you should be to get onto a plane. But I think this goes to a wider issue about airport times, because I get rather fed up with airlines telling us it's an hour and 10 minutes or whatever it is from Manchester to London or to Glasgow. It's absolutely not.
It's
You're
a
told
lie.
to get to
It's
the
a lie.
airport 2 hours in advance.
It gives them a wriggle room.
You don't have to get out there on the tube or whatever you got to get to. You've got a connecting bus or something else. You've got all security to go through. And actually, when we had a race last year, a friend of mine, we went from centre of London, Piccadilly Circus, to centre of George Square in Glasgow. One of us took the train, one of us took the plane. And my friend who took the plane arrived literally 2 minutes before me. So the idea, it's all these, these quick journey times.
And the train journey's what, 4.5 hours? So,
exactly, 4.5 hours, or 4:25.
I get that, but the thing is, of course, they will say, the pilot will say, we've just landed at Glasgow International Airport and delighted to say 10 minutes ahead of schedule.
Yes.
Because they build in like 2.5 hours for a flight from London to Glasgow, and it'll take them, what, an hour maximum type thing.
Absolutely.
So none of this is what it seems. However, what I would like to say is that I would be happy if I could be guaranteed a half an hour delay anywhere. I'd be quite happy. I'd be thinking, that's OK.
Trouble is, that's the average, isn't it? Which means some of them will be a lot longer.
Well, yeah, it wasn't too bad there when you just looked at all of that. Having your flights delayed by more than an hour is an inconvenience. Having them cancelled is absolutely terrible. And not having your baggage arrive at all is the biggest inconvenience of all.
It is. There's a famous sign in Oslo Airport, I think it's no longer there, in English, said, we take your luggage and send it in all directions.
Yeah.
We're going to take a pause from the papers and quickly take a look at some live pictures at the moment coming into us from the Victory Day parades that are taking place in Moscow in Russia. This, of course, is all of Putin's troops lined up to celebrate what they've been calling their special military operation in Ukraine. In fact, President Putin has been speaking in Red Square in the last half an hour, describing what's been, as he terms, a real war being waged against Russia by the Ukrainians. But in actual fact, Kyiv has been under fire by a number of kamikaze drones. There have been 4 attacks in 8 days. So there he is, President Putin, live in Moscow.
Is this not to commemorate victory against the Nazis?
Yes,
against
it is.
the Germans in Leningrad and places, and
yeah,
Stalingrad.
And they're obviously trying to invoke a lot of this kind of sort of national pride around that. But, of course, it's entirely different defending against the Nazis versus invading another country on false pretences. Norman, some reaction to that?
Well, I mean, he talked about a special military operation going into Ukraine, and then now he's talking about a war that the West is waging against him. You know, who started it? I mean, he did, and he's in a difficult situation. He can't back down Putin because he's put all his chips on this particular number, as it were, on the roulette wheel, and he's losing. He's losing big time, and this is a desperate attempt to try to cajole the population at large into believing that Russia's under threat as a war. You know, he started it. He can stop it tomorrow.
Yeah, well, he also says that Russia is in favour of peace and that the West is trying to destroy his country, but he wants a peaceful future.
He wants a piece of Ukraine.
Well,
that's what he wants.
Have any of you ever been to Red Square?
No.
It's very impressive buildings and things around it, and that big parade area that's there as well. But it is, I think, a lot of organisation to get military vehicles of that size into the area and blow straight through. But quite appalling, though, when you think of what he's doing in Ukraine, and that's part of the celebration.
Well, also, we're talking this morning about the situation with the Zaporizhia nuclear plant and the United Nations calling it a severe threat, of a serious threat to life. And, you know, 16 towns around the nuclear plant having been evacuated. I mean, reminiscent of what happened with Chernobyl, and none of us really talking about it.
And it's worse because actually there's a far bigger complex of reactors there than Chernobyl was. And, of course, we had a consequence of fallout in this country from Chernobyl. For the Welsh agricultural industry, it was damaged for about 20 years. This is going to be far worse if something happens there, far worse.
Heaven forbid.
Let's break off from those live pictures from Moscow and speak to Davinia about a double-page spread in The Sun. They've got a big feature on the musician Matt Willis, the husband of Emma Willis.
That's right. He was from a band, Busted, and he's just come out about his being an addict, a cocaine addict and alcohol addict, and how him and Emma sort of have survived this journey. But it's about, there's a BBC documentary going out on May the 17th at 9 p.m, fighting addiction. But I just think the TV seems to focus, or the media focuses on, like, that Class A addiction, when I think the biggest story is that the whole world seems to be addicted to bliss point foods, and it's having a knock-on effect through health, as mental health and physical.
What's a bliss point?
OK, so you've got big companies like Mars Company, Unilever, the Procter & Gamble. They employ actual mathematicians to come up with formulas to find the bliss point which makes food addictive, the addictive properties. And that usually is sugar, obviously, but then you've got veg oil, which is a really addictive substance. So if you have a look on anything you've bought in a packet, it will have rapeseed oil or sunflower oil, and it has these, it gives you a mouthfeel, but it also triggers your hormones in your brain to say, let's seek out more. So I think, I mean, it's great that they've come out about their battle against cocaine, but really we need to look at, we are giving our children, our grandparents treats, but it's addictive foods, and it's setting them up for a lifetime of addiction, of yo-yo dieting, like mental health issues, and not being able to focus because their brain is subconsciously seeking the next hit.
My next question is, how do they get away with it? And they get away with it because of the food lobbies and how strong they are.
Yes. I mean, all the studies seem to be paid for by, say, like General Mills, you know. They're pushing that you need to have a whole grain diet. It just turns into sugar when you consume it, no matter how much you dress it up. So, yeah, I think there needs to be some impartiality about it.
Well, Charles and Camilla got well dressed up over the weekend, Norman, and you've gone to the I newspaper for their take on this. What are they saying?
Well, this is a story actually about nations which are looking to change the head of state. This is the story I've got here on page 12 of the Eye. And there's a number of states where the king is still head of state, 14, I think, around the world. And about half of them are looking now to become republics. Jamaica, Grenada, Belize, St Kitts and Nevis is the latest one, where the Prime Minister in the last couple of days has said, Dr Terence Drew, that the nation was, quote, not totally free, unquote, as long as King Charles III remained head of state. And I think what's happened here is a lot of build-up has happened over the last 20, 30 years of countries wanting to move into, if you like, the modern age and recognise their own head of state and their own countries. And why wouldn't they? But they held off because of respect for the Queen. They didn't want to upset the Queen. And now the Queen's no longer there, then that head of steam is coming forward.
Norman, what do they get out of losing him as head of state? I mean, what, other than, you know, we heard Prince William, the Prince of Wales, at the coronation concert on Sunday night, you know, paying tribute to King, country and Commonwealth. And the royal family do a great deal of good, don't they, for the Commonwealth countries?
The Queen was... Yeah, the Queen was very keen on the Commonwealth, particularly. And I think I don't think it's just about Charles, actually. I don't think it's about Charles. I don't think it's about Britain. I think it's just about countries saying, you know, we are an independent country a long way from Britain. Our own head of state should be from our own country.
Aren't they cutting off their nose to spite their face, is my question. I mean, what are they putting into it and what are they getting out of it? And it would seem to me they might lose out quite a lot if they want to lose him as their head of state.
Well, that's a matter, as Charles himself has said, it's a matter for them, whether they want to go down that road or not. I mean, there's pros and cons, I suppose, but ultimately it comes down to, if you're a country thousands of miles away, do you want the head of state to be from Britain? I suppose that's a question.
Davinia, do you have a dog?
Yes, I do. I've got 2 maniac dogs.
2 minutes. Tell me what they're called and what they are.
OK, they're Spanish dogs that we got from Spain. They're called the Podencos. They're hunting dogs.
Are they rescue dogs? Or
well, no, they're not. But there is actually a huge campaign to rescue Podencos in particular. They're the forgotten dogs of Spain. They're often abused. But mine definitely weren't abused.
I've heard about those dogs before.
They're really lovely.
So they were only in at one stage and now they're not used as much? Or...
they have
a limited shelf life or something?
Yeah, and there's a lot of cruelty around them, but they're really nice. They look like foxes. I must, hands up, I'm not a very good dog trainer. They run off all the time. I spent all my life chasing over fields in Lancashire, shouting Chico, Chica, because that's their names, because it's boy and girl in Spanish. Not very original, but it sounds fabulous in Lancashire.
But Norman's got a story now in the Star, and it relates to how walking your dog can lead to injury.
Well, this is the Star, so take it with a pinch of salt. But, I mean, it just shows that thinking nothing in life is risk-free. Nothing at all is risk-free. And apparently, the 3 greatest health risks from walking your dog are in order of frequency. Top of the list is a finger fracture, which presumably comes from the dog pulling you on when you're trying to get away.
What about the injuries to the dog?
Well, indeed, that's not covered by the story, I'm afraid. But the second most dangerous is a traumatic brain issue, which sounds very serious indeed, doesn't it? Traumatic brain issue is the second most common injury suffered by people walking their dogs, because what happens is most injuries occur when people fall over after being pulled by or tangled in or tripped by the lead.
Yeah.
And the third most serious thing is a strained shoulder. So there you are. Walking your dog is really, according to the Daily Star, quite serious and risky.
For once, I absolutely agree with the Daily Star. That is truth. That is truth.
Oh, my goodness. We have to leave it there.
Be careful.
It's been a pleasure, as always. Norman, Davinia, come back soon. Thank you both very much.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Right, so royal family members volunteered around the country yesterday for what was called the Big Help Out.
Yes, and the Duke and Duchess of Gloucester attended a church party. The Prince and Princess of Wales volunteered at a Scouts hut. Never mind them, it was their children that starred at that. Lou Bug with his marshmallows.
Well,
and the Prime Minister was seen
there
preparing food for the elderly in Hertfordshire.
So we're joined by someone who volunteered alongside the Prime Minister, and her name is Catherine Johnson. And Catherine is the Chief Executive of the Royal Voluntary Service, the RVS. Catherine, good morning. Lovely to see you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Thank you. And Catherine, how would you sum up how yesterday went from your perspective?
Yeah, so we were leading, so Matt Hyde and I at Scouts and RVS were leading the Big Help Out charge yesterday. It was a bit of a volunteer revolution. It was an experiment that we came up with to work with others together, NCVO, the royal family, the Prime Minister's office, the opposition, to actually shine a light on volunteering and helping people who've never thought about it before to get involved, to have a go. And I think we can genuinely say it was a success, top to bottom of the country, led by the royal family, and lots of the young royals as well, out and about, and obviously our political leadership, both Sir Keir and the Prime Minister and his wife.
Of course, all of those people are used to volunteering, aren't they? Effectively, their roles are sort of voluntary. They don't get paid a great deal for what they do in terms of contribution to society. I mean, I know there is a small fee, but for Rishi Sunak, for example, it is negligible. But for ordinary people, I suppose it's inspiring to see people going out and doing that. I think of my 5-year-old daughter's homework this weekend. It was to go out and volunteer. We've never had homework like that before, and we had to take photographs of it and then upload it onto the website.
What did she do?
Well, I have to say, we didn't know of any events going on near us, so there wasn't anything.
But I think, Catherine, from your point of view, the big help out, wasn't there, correct me if I'm wrong, there's a website you could log on to and see what was happening in your area?
Yeah, so I'm so sorry you didn't find anything.
I know, I'm terrible.
We didn't know about the Big Help Out app. So you could go to the app. So we had about 80,000 people who had downloaded the app. And on there was hundreds of thousands of opportunities in your areas across the whole of the country. And we did it that way because people have been telling, organisations like Royal Voluntary Service that actually they can't find something. So you're a great example. So we must do better next year. Otherwise, we will have seriously failed. But what you could do is you could download the app, you could go on and you still can. So the app is still up. You just go to the App Store, put the Big Help Out in, and put your postcode in, and things that you can have a go at, charities and community organisations that you can speak to about going along and having a conversation about something that might inspire you will still be available over the next few months, because today is the start of the big follow-up, because the whole point is to help people to find the thing that inspires them in their community so they can be active and benefit from the act of volunteering and giving their time.
So Catherine, was the Prime Minister's ability at chopping vegetables inspiring?
Do you know what? I was really, really inspired. Both Rishi and his wife spent 2 hours with us, and as you can see on the screen, with all some of our clients, who were just so surprised. They had no idea that he and his wife were coming. They didn't only just help genuinely to prepare the lunch, but they then served the lunch, and they spent time sitting with all of the clients and then talking to the volunteers, and they spent some time with new volunteers who'd come along as part of the Big Help Out yesterday to sort of see what goes on at this particular lunch club and whether or not it'd be something that they'd like to do more of in the future. Clearly, I had to explain to them that it's not, if they were going to come and volunteer again, they probably weren't going to see the Prime Minister and his wife every time. This was the whole point of the Big Help Out, was to bring all parts of our civic society together.
Well, listen, I promise I'm going to download that app and I'm going to make sure we do some helping out. That's inspired us, and we know it's really good for mental health as well. Thank you so much indeed for inspiring us, shining a light on all the good works that people have been up to up and down the country.
Thank you, Catherine. You could have done litter collecting.
I know. The truth is, we were quite busy over the bank holiday, but we'll make sure homework's not in till tomorrow, so maybe
You couldn't be bothered. That's the truth of it. Sorry, little Poppy, your mummy and daddy could be bothered.
No, it's
to
just
help
I was
other
expecting
people.
when I opened the homework that it was something we could just sit at the kitchen table and do, but we had to go and do something, and I wasn't prepared for that.
Admirable.
Next time.
Here's the weather.
Hello there, welcome to your GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. I'm Craig Snell. Having a look at today, really it's a mixture of sunshine and scattered showers, and some of these showers will be quite heavy and thundery. It's all down to this area low pressure, which is actually not going to go very far over the next few days, giving a rather changeable week across many parts of the UK. But in any sunshine, it should feel fairly warm if you are out and about. So if we start Tuesday, a quite grey start actually for a lot of the UK. Still some overnight rain to contend with initially, but some sunshine will develop as the morning goes on, but this will allow some showers to readily form, and especially as we go into the afternoon, these showers will turn quite heavy and thundery, and also quite slow moving in places, especially across parts of England and Wales, so could produce quite a lot of surface spray on the road, so do take some extra time for your journeys, especially as we approach the evening rush hour. But in the sunshine, feeling fairly warm, could see highs reaching 20 or 21 degrees down towards the southeast corner.
The showers will rumble on as we go into the evening, but for most it should turn drier and clearer for a time as we approach midnight. But then later on, this next band of rain and showers will spread into many western parts. So for many eastern areas, actually a cooler night than the night just gone, but out towards the west with this, thanks to this next area of cloud, another mild one to come with lows not falling much lower than around 10 to 11 degrees. So after some sunshine in the east at first on Wednesday, really it goes downhill once again from the west as this next spell of rain and showers spreads its way eastwards across the country. Again, we could see some heavy and torrential downpours in places and the risk of thunder at times. Perhaps maybe some longer spells of rain too across Scotland and Northern Ireland. Temperatures a little bit down on today, but still around average for the time of year. And very little changes actually on Thursday, another day of sunshine and scattered showers. But hopefully, as we approach the weekend, something a little bit drier coming through with temperatures maybe also climbing just that little bit.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss? Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Skip the GP for common illnesses, says the Prime Minister as he launches a new plan to free up millions of appointments.
Heard it all before? Let us know. Good morning. The time 9:01. It is a Tuesday morning. It is the 9th of May.
This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn Holmes and Isabel Webster. Here's what's leading the news this morning.
Rishi Sunak will announce today that 7 million GP appointments a year could be made available under a £645 million plan, which would give pharmacists the power to provide medicines without an appointment with your doctor. The Minister of Primary Care told us the move would make a drastic improvement.
So if you've got a really sore throat or earache or a rash or something like that, you'll be able to go to a pharmacist, get quick treatment, and they'll be able to prescribe antibiotics as well.
Metropolitan Police has expressed regret over the arrest of anti-monarchy activists ahead of the coronation. The leader of the protest group Republic was amongst those detained, but police said they were unable to prove intent to disrupt.
And the King and Queen have paid tribute to the millions of people who celebrated the coronation with them this weekend, saying the nation's support was the greatest gift they got. It comes as the first official photo of the newly crowned monarch has been released.
And remember, you can vote for the GB News Breakfast Show in the Reality TV Awards.
You mean
first
us?
time. Yeah,
Us?
our programme's been nominated first time.
Are we seen as a reality TV programme?
Well, no, there's lots of different categories, but we are in the news category against Good Morning Britain and the likes, you and me up there. We've also been nominated for a Trick Award, and you can vote for Eamonn personally in the Best News Presenter category of the Trick Awards. He's, of course, defending the title, having won it last year as well.
I only won it because of you guys.
It is
you
a public
guys
vote.
At home listening and phoning, it's a public vote, and without your votes we wouldn't win them. So vote early and vote often, and it's very, very much appreciated by not only me, Isabel, but everybody here at the whole station.
OK, to our top story this morning. The Prime Minister will today launch a new plan to free up 7 million GP appointments a year by allowing people to seek treatment for common conditions at pharmacies.
OK, this followed the announcement yesterday of an overhaul to GP booking systems. The government says it could end the 8 a.m. rush for appointments. We're not sure how it will do that, but we spoke to the Minister for Primary Care, Neil O'Brien. This is what he had to say.
There are more pharmacies than there were when we came to office, and this investment that we're making today of another 645 million is exactly responding to those pressures, and it's responding to something that a lot of pharmacists have said to me, which is that they want to do more. They want to do more proper clinical work and advanced services, and by making this big investment today, we're going to enable just that, and so that will take some of the pressure off pharmacies as well as taking the pressure off GPs. But the other thing that we're doing today is making another big investment, about £240 million in new technology for GPs, because we know it's so frustrating for people and really terrible if you ring your GP and you can't get through. And that's why we're spending the equivalent of about £60,000 per practice on new technology so that we upgrade their phones and you never get an engaged tone again, and that we also give them really good online access, partly to free up the phones and partly because that's a really convenient way of getting in touch with your GP as well for a lot of people. So as well as the big investment in pharmacy to take the pressure off, we're also investing in technology and also going to carry on growing the number of appointments and growing the workforce as well.
OK, that's the government stance, that's their aim, that's their objectives. Eve Pollard has been listening in on all of that and will now provide commentary on those stories for the next half hour or so. GP appointments. Isabel and I have been saying all morning, we've heard these proposals before. What do you make of them?
I think they're rather brilliant. I think if they work. For a while, we had a house in France when we were both editing and earning lots of money. It's gone now. But what was brilliant about France is this is exactly what they do. They cut out a lot of the small stuff so the doctors can get on with the important stuff. And my advice to everybody, because it's new here, is make the pharmacist your friend. I did. There was a local pharmacy. We were very kind to them, very nice to them. They were then very interested in us. So we're always swimming, so you'd often have to have antibiotics in the air because you go in the sea and all the problems we know about. And you'd have one and you'd say, actually, it didn't work that well, so they'd give you another one. I felt it as a way, I had two doctors, not one. I had the proper doctor for big stuff, and then the local pharmacy was really helpful. We had a proper relationship, and that's what I would say. Don't go to a different pharmacy. If you can find one near you who you get on with, that will really help in the future. Great with kids. They know what kids have taken before. It's really important. And let's hope this really happens and they are allowed to give us proper drugs, not just over-the-counter stuff.
Yeah, because, Eve, I mean, it sounds like everybody has agreed it's a great idea. That's the reason it's been proposed so many times. It's just making it happen. And we've seen the number of pharmacies declining. We're actually back to 2015 levels, but the population's increased.
Yes.
And they're already saying they've got a huge shortfall in funding in the pharmacy.
Well, I presume that the government and the pharmacies are talking about this, and I assume there's an intelligent way of doing this. If you're looking after and if you're processing so many different things for your ears, different treatments, you should get a certain amount of money. If you're a small pharmacy in a little town, you could perhaps get less, but it might keep pharmacies going.
Yeah. Well, pharmacists are saying we haven't had the support in the past. We've felt that support drifting away. We just got to make sure they not only support doctors, but they support pharmacists as well, and then it may work for all of us. We were saying the practice of having to book an appointment with your GP to then get another appointment to be referred to a specialist. So say you've got an ear infection or whatever, and you're sent to eye, ear, nose and throat specialist.
It's just too long and it's just too painful. And I think this should cut it out. But I think also perhaps it should be made very clear at the very beginning so we know this is what your pharmacist is allowed to give you. Remember, pharmacists are often very well educated in medical stuff.
And they're doctors, all of them are doctors themselves.
Absolutely, so they've wasted all this stuff and they could be useful. And pharmacists themselves should encourage people to come in. There is one problem with this.
Which is?
There are a lot of lonely people who go to their doctors to talk to them. Nobody talks about this, but that is a problem. And so I think social care will have to do their bit, and perhaps friends and relatives should realise that if you can't... I mean, the nightmare of getting to the doctor at 8 o'clock, haven't we all done it?
Yeah.
And at 8:10, you get through finally, and they say, all the appointments have gone.
Yeah.
I think it's great they're going to have a scheme where you can actually leave a message, so you can say, I am dying here, can you come round tomorrow or today, or can I get in, and explain what's wrong with you, I think will help. But I also think we've got to start using other things that we have in this society to help us get out of the problems.
Absolutely.
OK. Let's talk about knife crime now. It's a major issue on the streets, and one of the government's proposals in tackling it is that many young people are dying due to violence. One former gang member in Hastings is now determined to offer solutions.
Our South East of England reporter Ray Addison looks into it.
On the corner of Battle and Old Church Roads in Hastings, a pair of boxing gloves hang from a tree. A memorial to 16-year-old Connor Ansell, who was fatally stabbed on this spot in 2017. Kyle Miller was Connor's best friend.
We got boxing gloves, a pair of Connor's shoes, and a plaque here with his name on it. So to us, to Connor's friends and family, this is where we come on his anniversary day.
Connor was stabbed in the stomach with a hunting knife with a 25-centimetre blade.
They ran up behind him and he had no idea it was happening. They've ended up coming around this corner here, and it was this bank here actually where they fell.
His killer, who was just 17, was sentenced to 9 years for manslaughter.
It's a hard place for me because it's sort of like lets the realisation sink in of what's actually happened. Something I've never wanted to accept or tried to accept. So I just, I tend to not come here.
Although knife crime is actually decreasing across Sussex as a whole, Hastings is bucking that trend, with offences going up by 2%. One man trying to prevent more needless deaths is former gang member Carl Scott. A victim of knife crime himself, today Carl is installing an emergency bleed kit in Hastings town centre.
The whole point of this box is it's about prevention, and catastrophic bleeds are what kill you. And if we've got a piece of kit like what I've got here that can help stem a bleed until the ambulance service arrives, then let's put them up all over the place.
The kit contains everything you need to pack and stem a bleed, including a battlefield-strength tourniquet. But Carl admits he's struggled to find locations willing to take them due to the stigma attached.
It's taken me just over 6 months. I've contacted numerous businesses to have this kit up. Nobody wants to admit that we've got a knife crime issue.
However, Carl's initiative does have the support of Sussex Police. Simon Yates is the force's Detective Chief Inspector.
I think it should be seen as a positive thing and not something to raise fear in the community, for sure. They're there to help. If they're not needed, we won't use them. But actually, having it locally could potentially save someone's life. And if it saves one person's life, it's worth having, isn't it? So I'd definitely like to see more.
Although nothing can bring Connor Ansell back to his friends and family, Kyle hopes that one day they can install a bleed kit here at Connor's tree.
It'd be amazing. You know, to have one here especially. I feel like Connor would be proud of that. It'd be good.
Ray Addison, GB News.
So bleeding kits.
Yeah.
What do you make of the idea of bleeding kits?
I think there is a danger because apparently people do break in and steal the defibrillators. But if that village, if that area feels safer that because they've got a bleeding kit, and there is a knife crime culture out there, why not let them have it? And if people are worried that people are going to steal, take one of those cameras that's watching people going 24 miles an hour and then giving them a warning or a card and a fine and put it on there. I think it's tough in certain places, and in London, it's tough everywhere, but it's different because there are too many people here that would see that. If it makes people happier, why not? I can't believe bleeding kits cost all that.
Well, it's more than happier, isn't it? It's safer. And life-saving.
Sure.
And, you know, you've got these people who've been through the worst trauma. It's
Correct.
so often young people that are caught up in knife crime and have turned it into something really positive.
Which is brilliant.
It's absolutely brilliant and should be applauded, really.
Let's applaud Andrew and Bev at 9:30 this morning. Guys, what have you got on To The Point?
Torn apart on Twitter, apparently I was.
Good morning. You are live. Good morning.
Good
What have you got coming our way? Very well.
Well, we're back in the studio. Nice to be back here after Buckingham Palace.
It's
after
really nice to be back here, actually. It really is. We're recovering
in the chaos.
from a rather party-filled weekend, I think, for both of us. But we've got a lot to talk about. We're going to be discussing Boris Johnson and King Charles having a dispute over Rwanda.
Apparently, Charles thought it was a terrible policy. This has all come out from a blog from Geeta Harry, who was Boris Johnson's communications secretary. And big story, I think, for people watching and listening. Pharmacies. Go to your pharmacy rather than your GP to get a variety of drugs.
Such a good news story. A triumph of common sense in that one. And also some interesting news if you wanted to get on the property ladder, or your grandchildren, your children trying to get on the property ladder. Mortgages without a deposit. 100% mortgage. Liam Halligan's going to be in the studio with us to talk about that and lots of other financial news.
Didn't we go down that route before, and didn't it all end in tears?
Thanks, guys. More on King Charles and Boris squaring up after this.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Right, we've been discussing this all morning. The Metropolitan Police overnight came out and said they regretted arresting 6 anti-monarchy protesters ahead of the coronation.
Why? I'm sure they were only there to visit and wave their little Union Jacks. You know, what a lot of nonsense. The leader of the protest group Republic was amongst those detained, but then police said they were unable to prove his intent to disrupt.
Well, Eve Pollard is here with a strong view in all of this. Eve?
Well, my feeling is that they've discovered that they had paint on some of them, which the leader said, I didn't know they had that. You've got horses. Can you imagine what a laughing stock, what a tragic stock it could have been? You've got horses that might trample over who knows what, children, all sorts of people in the crowd. This is one time when they should have been able to protest. They should have been far away from it. Protest somewhere not on the route. Make sure you've got some cameras so we can see their protest stations. It's just too dangerous.
Well, the police have only apologised for the 6 arrests where they were unable to prove intent, and none of these people had any apparatus on them that showed it that they were intending to lock on.
Correct.
They didn't have rape alarms. And there has to be a question, does there not, on a debate about whether or not we want to live in a society whereby you get arrested just because you're a member of an organisation and outside your home on the day of an event? I mean, surely we have to have the ability to have free speech.
Well, I'll tell you what.
So what do you think they were down there for? Do you think they were there for a day out?
Maybe they were there to protest, but can they not do that peacefully?
But they talked about having 6 months of talks. The 6 months of talks weren't final and organised enough, because then they have to say, if we're not going to arrest you, you have to leave home with transparent bags, and we have to see there aren't things that you can lock on, there aren't paints, and it could have been simplified. They should have been
The police
well away
are damned
from the
if they
march.
do, damned if they don't. If they had have created fuss, if a horse had have reared up into the crowd there, something awful had have happened, the police would have been blamed for it. But instead, they're being blamed for preventing something awful happening.
I think it's because it's related to the coronation and it's so emotive. The debates got completely destroyed. I think where everyone thinks this is something about whether or not you are in favour of the monarchy, park that. This is about whether or not we have freedom of speech. Imagine they wanted to build a nuclear power station, the end of your road.
But
you
we're
have
not.
the right to
and you must have that right.
And if you step outside your house and you get arrested because they don't agree with you,
But what was wrong
then
is
you're in
these
Hong
6
Kong.
months of talks didn't work out exactly what you could take with you, what you couldn't take with you. And the protesters, the police should have actually played hardball and said, you can't take stuff with you that could be used. You have to go just with your placards. And, you know, if you're telling us you want to placard or hang your placard on certain things or pin them, we're going to say that won't
Here's
work.
what genuinely amazes me. I'm from Northern Ireland, where to support the monarchy or don't support the monarchy is a religious issue, right?
Yes.
The Union Jack means something completely different in Northern Ireland than it does in the rest of the UK.
Yeah.
So it's very, very emotive. But do I wake up in the morning thinking, oh, we better do something about that monarchy? Because if life goes on like this...
That's about the issue, but I'm talking about
No, excuse me. I just want to get in the head of people. We're not talking about that. I'm talking about annoying
Why you're
the monarchy.
anti-monarchy.
Right. I'm not anti-monarchy.
No, I'm saying that's what you're talking about.
No, I'm saying that people who wake up and go, well, I can't pay my gas bill and my tyres flat in my car, but the thing I want to protest about is that Camilla and Charles. We can't be having those... Who wakes up thinking like that?
But that is the mood of the moment. Anger, and all the time everybody's stepping back and saying, please upset us a bit more. I mean, we're encouraging them almost to upset. Those talks with the police were not open. And they should have said quite rightly, we want our right to protest. I think, as you say, free country, very important in a democracy. But they should have worked out a way that would work for both of them. And they didn't. And then the police suddenly got worried in case they were going to go out. And as we discovered, people had pain. What were they going to do with that? The coronation was on the front page of half the papers in Europe, a lot of the papers in America. We'd have been the laughing stock of the world if something had gone wrong.
And we should pay tribute to those police officers who did a brilliant job on Saturday. And I was actually personally thrilled that the whole thing went without any catastrophe. I was on edge. My own little boy was in the crowds, and we'd spent all week talking about the possibility of some sort of event.
Awful thing happening.
Yeah, and I was really pleased, and we should thank all of them for that.
And those officers standing in the cold and the rain, you know how cold it was out there and whatever. So it's a big tribute to them. And I do say, Isabel, your little William in the crowd there, little boy taken in by the magic of the whole thing. If something had have gone wrong by some Egypt of a protester, there's a time and a place for everything. And I just think, oh, is there nothing else going on in your life that you have to worry about this on a Saturday for an event that's going to take place once every 50 years or whatever it happens to be? But each to their own. But it's not on my radar. I worried about Man United playing Arsenal at the weekend, but I wasn't worried whether Charles was king or not. I'm not serious.
And I think a lot of very sensible people would take that point of view. And as you say, a coronation is mostly a once-in-a-lifetime thing. And it's very important. If you're worried about this country doing well, having inward tourism, it's very important that people feel safe when they come.
And the other thing that makes me laugh about it is anything these monarchist protesters are going to do is going to change the fact that we have a monarchy or not? Answer, no. Nothing they're going to do.
Well, let's hope
That's
not,
the Constitution.
because we don't want that to happen. But, you know, protests have historically succeeded. We talked about the suffragettes this morning. Probably would have arrested them if they'd stepped outside the door under these sorts of proposals.
Well, they stepped outside horses.
Exactly, and died. But
died.
Yeah.
But that was the other thing, that they felt that they didn't want to kill or didn't want to damage anybody. They damaged themselves.
Yeah, well, amazing. I have to say, though, you know, coronation's over. A bit of a hangover this morning for all of us, of sort of sad feeling. But it was lovely to have something positive to talk about all week last week. There's so much doom and gloom. We talked so much about the bills, agony, the cost of living crisis. And wasn't it nice for people to be out on street parties, helping out, talking to their neighbours, doing best of Britain?
Well, as Eamonn says, you go out of London, but also in London I saw quite a lot of bunting, quite a lot of Union Jacks in windows. But you go out of London, people were really looking forward to this. This is a social occasion with your village, with your street, with whatever. People wanted a nice reason to go out and have fun. It's very important that, I mean, and we don't have Bastille Day like the French do, and days like that. So this was our chance to take advantage of it.
It's not very long now until Trooping the Colour. I think it's about a month or 3 weeks, so we'll have all the carriages out on the Mall again in a few weeks' time.
Yeah, but it's not quite the same. I mean, it's
no, it's not, but it is something else.
But it's an annual event.
Do
you know, I had great admiration for Princess Anne.
Riding.
Well, yeah, she came out of the Abbey. She made a point of speaking to Harry and making him laugh. Went down, while everybody else would get into cars and coaches, she throws the leg over the back of a horse.
She did take the cloak off, I think, first.
And then she giddies up like John Wayne up up the mile.
She's
on
so
that.
wonderful.
She's a brilliant horse rider, and probably thought, oh, I've been stuck sitting in that abbey for a couple of hours. Rather nice to get out and have a ride.
What was also quite funny is the feather on her hat obscured the view of Harry. For the entire coronation, to the dismay of all the tabloids. Possibly.
And you know, this business of him going back for his son's birthday party, he got back, I think, at 4:30 LA time. He was a 90-mile drive from home after that.
I probably got a helicopter.
So he wasn't going to get, no, he was in a carcade.
Right.
So he was going to be at least, probably 3 hours for that drive. So there's 7:30. Are you telling me this 4-year-old, they had him up, you know, after that?
And what was sad, they apparently laid a place for him at lunch, hoping he would come. And as we know, the King raised a toast to Archie's birthday.
Wherever he may be.
Wherever he may be. I mean, what's sad is he's apparently coming over because of this media trial. But what's sad is I can't see an obvious time where they will get together. And the longer this goes on, the harder it will be to sort out.
Well, there's an interview with her father, and her half-brother and the half-sister. And it's fascinating to see how these people just sit incredulously, they're just sitting there thinking, you know, she said she grew up alone, that she hadn't got a brother and sister, whatever, and they just think, lies, lies, lies.
And the father paid for her very expensive college education, because, as you know, you have to pay a lot in the States. It's tragic that he's had a stroke and she's not been to see him.
Well, Eve, we could talk to you all day. We have to say goodbye to the wonderful Eve Pollard. We hope to see you again very soon. And we say goodbye to you at home as well, however you are with us on radio or on TV. We'll be back from 6 o'clock tomorrow.
Farewell, auf Wiedersehen, goodbye. But hello to Andrew and Bev, to the point.
Good morning.
We certainly are to the point. Tuesday.
We're happy to be
9th
back.
May, back in the studio after our exertions in Buckingham Palace.
And also, it feels a little bit like a gear change today, back to some politics. We're going to reflect on the weekend a little bit, but we also, of course, we didn't talk a huge amount about the political fallout of the local elections last week.
Exactly. Big disaster for the Tories, there's no doubt about it, but not brilliant. Good for Labour, but not good enough in my view. But Rishi Sunak, very sensible policy today we're talking about. Pharmacies. You can go to your pharmacy and get basic drugs instead of queuing for a GP where it could take 2 weeks. That's sensible.
Absolutely. We're also going to be talking a bit further as well, what Isabel and Eamonn were discussing about the police action at the coronation. Was it too heavy-handed? They've come out and apologised now.
And did the Prime Minister fall out with the King last summer over the policy of small boats to Rwanda? They did. They fell out big time. So we'll be talking about that too.
Lots of that and lots more. Stay with us.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to the